Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Bakugou and Kirishima Were Hit by a Baby Quirk? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Tuesday dawned with an air of regret for Bakugou, as if the mere act of waking up was a mistake. The biting cold added insult to injury, with the thermometer reading a frigid 49 degrees. Bakugou strutted the streets, feeling like a complete fool. Fortunately, he wasn't alone in this predicament. Fate had partnered him with Kirishima for today's patrol, an uncommon occurrence given their separate agencies. It seemed like a rare acceptance of their collaboration. The sun timidly rose, officially signaling the start of their shift. The early morning chill at 7 o'clock was enough to make anyone shiver, even before winter arrived. Bakugou's freezing boots only exacerbated his discomfort. Perhaps checking the weather would have been a wise move. Yet, at least he could take solace in not being as foolish as Kirishima, who was shamelessly shirtless. The man should be the one suffering, not Bakugou. A gust of wind brushed past, prompting Bakugou to instinctively hug himself, his frown deepening. Why the F, is it so dim and cold? Bakugou grumbled to no one in particular. Kirishima couldn't help but chuckle, a light, musical sound that echoed through the air. He inhaled the polluted city air, finding some strange joy in it, before exhaling with contentment. I love mornings like these. They're so calm and peaceful. What more could anyone ask for at a time like this? Kirishima spread his arms wide to emphasize the serene surroundings. Bakugou scoffed and rolled his eyes in response. Beach, please, he retorted. Peaceful, my effing, but I'm effing freezing. I'd fight the dim and cold if I could. Another laugh escaped Kirishima's lips. It's good to know you haven't changed in the 4 years we became pro-heroes. Bakugou stared at the younger man, a hint of confusion in his eyes. What do you mean? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Kirishima hummed in reply, contemplating his words. I mean, he began, you've always been a troublemaker back in UA, so I was hoping you wouldn't change after we graduated. He turned his head to steal a glance at Bakugou, who absorbed the sentiment. Bakugou responded with a nonchalant shrug, tucking his cold hands deep into the baggy pockets of his pants. His explosive quirk didn't function well in the cold, so he tried to generate as much sweat as possible to minimize the pain. Why are we patrolling this early anyway? Kirishima asked, a slight pout forming on his lips. No villain in their right mind would wake up at the crack of dawn and choose violence. Tell that to the villain we caught a year ago. Kirishima swayed his head to the side, conceding that it was a fair point. Bakugou and Kirishima embarked on their street patrol, anticipating a potentially eventful day. Time passed slowly, yet nothing out of the ordinary occurred. Eventually, during their lunch break, they sat down to eat Subway sandwiches. The meal was average at best, and they engaged in casual conversation about their plans after work. Maybe we could organize a game night with the squad, just like we used to back in UA, Kirishima suggested, finishing his sub and wiping his hands and mouth. Bakugou cringed at the thought of a game night. He enjoyed the company of his associates, he won't admit it aloud, but leaving the safety of his home for non-urgent matters was not his cup of tea. He had no intention of inviting those lazy slobs into his apartment. Kirishima continued rambling about the squad's potential activities, interrupted only by a girlish screech that pierced the air. Bakugou swiftly turned in his seat, his eyes narrowing as he observed smoke billowing near a building. With a curt nod exchanged between them, Kirishima and Bakugou dashed toward the source of the commotion. Finally, some action. Bakugou utilized his explosive abilities to propel himself into the air, hurtling toward the dark cloud of smoke. On the ground below, there was no fire, only a thick smoke emanating from what appeared to be a smoke machine. Bakugou executed a controlled descent, rolling upon landing to minimize any potential injuries. And there, he saw the villain, a surprising sight, as it was a female. Clad in a revealing outfit with short shorts, she possessed dark blue hair, gray eyes, and pale skin. Bakugou's disdain for her was evident, finding her appearance far from appealing, thanks to her excessive makeup. Bakugou clenched his fist, setting off a small explosion, and assumed a battle-ready stance. With a burst of his quirk, he lunged toward her. She evaded his attack, adopting her own combat posture. Bakugou couldn't help but feel perplexed by her refusal to employ her quirk. Perhaps it wasn't suited for one-on-one confrontations, but rather for other purposes. Regardless, Bakugou refused to yield. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him and caught sight of the girl charging at him, brandishing a knife. With effortless precision, Bakugou swiftly kicked the weapon from her hand and restrained her. "What the F do you think you were doing?" Bakugou demanded, his breath heavy and labored. The dark-haired girl chose not to respond, instead smirking and revealing her repulsively yellowed teeth. The spiky blonde fought the urge to retch at the sight. "Dynamite!" Unintentionally loosening his grip, Bakugou was kicked away by the villain, who finally unleashed her quirk. A pink blast erupted from her hand, targeting both Kirishima and Bakugou. They felt their bodies being pulled apart and fused in a twisted, agonizing manner. The blast seared their flesh and limbs, causing excruciating pain. They screamed in torment, their bodies feeling as though they were aflame. Eventually, the searing sensation subsided, leaving Kirishima and Bakugou sprawled on the unforgiving ground, groaning from the endured agony. Quickly recovering, Bakugou sprinted toward the incapacitated villain and bellowed, "Die!" A tremendous explosion erupted, leaving the female antagonist unconscious and severely injured. Bakugou rubbed the strained muscles in his neck, feeling the tension gradually dissipate. What kind of quirk was that? It had been a hellish experience. Bakugou picked up the defeated villain and promptly notified the authorities. Soon enough, reporters and police officers arrived at the scene. Bakugou answered their inquiries while Kirishima scoured the area for any potential evidence to aid the investigation. Suddenly, Kirishima heard a baby crying from a nearby dark alley, prompting him to sprint toward the sound, his concern mounting. It was inconceivable for a baby to be anywhere near the combat zone. Was the infant injured? Kirishima drew closer and turned a corner, where he discovered a baby swaddled in a blue blanket. A connection stirred within him, compelling him to extend a helping hand. Carefully, he approached the child and lifted him into his arms. The blue blanket served as a signifier it was a baby boy. The child possessed beautiful brown skin, adorned with the plumpest cheeks one could imagine. His black, spiky hair added to his irresistible charm. Kirishima cradled the baby, gently swaying and murmuring soothing words. "Shoo, it's okay," Kirishima cooed, his voice filled with tenderness. "Shoo, shoo, no need to cry, little one. You're safe now." Gradually, the baby's cries subsided, and he opened his eyes. Kirishima felt a jolt surge through his veins as he gazed into the infant's stunning red eyes, a captivating blend of crimson and ruby. The baby giggled, extending his arms toward Kirishima. The red-haired hero responded with a soft smile, leaving the alley with the baby cradled in his embrace. The connection he felt with the child was inexplicable. He saw glimpses of himself and Bakugou in the innocent little one. But how did the baby end up there? Would the police take him away if they discovered his origins? Would he be treated as evidence? Kirishima held the baby tightly, sensing an unfamiliar instinct and unwavering determination to protect this child, regardless of the circumstances. Retrieving his phone from his pocket, Kirishima composed a message to Bakugou. "Red Riot. Hey, Blasty, come to my apartment after you're done, okay? Dynamite. I've just finished. Where are you? Red Riot. I'm heading home right now and I may or may not have a little surprise. Dynamite. What the f did you do now? Red Riot. Nothing. Just come over. Dynamite. Fine, you're lucky our shift is over. Red Riot. Thanks, Blasty. Read 2:40 p.m. Kirishima found himself teetering on the edge of an emotional breakdown. A whirlwind of circumstances had thrown his life into disarray. Firstly, there was a baby in his apartment, an adorable, slumbering infant who had somehow found his way into Kirishima's care. Secondly, and perhaps more distressing, the child was not his own. Kirishima's heart swelled with affection for the little one, and he couldn't help but view himself as a fatherly figure, if only temporarily. However, the weight of his actions was pressed upon him, knowing that he could potentially face legal consequences for his impulsive decision. He groaned, running his fingers through his gelled red hair, a mix of frustration and concern plaguing his thoughts. Why hadn't he just handed the baby over to the police? What was wrong with him? Regret gnawed at Kirishima as he questioned his own judgment. The baby had been abandoned in a dark alley, and given the circumstances, Kirishima couldn't bear the thought of him being moved into an unstable home or an impersonal foster system. But what did Kirishima know about caring for a baby? And this baby looked to be around 2 months old. He had truly messed up. A knock on his apartment door interrupted his self-doubt, and a glimmer of hope sparked within him. Maybe, just maybe, this was the resolution he desperately needed. Kirishima hurriedly made his way to the door, anticipation building as he swung it open. Standing before him was Bakugou, his ash-blonde hair giving away his annoyance. Kirishima mustered a smile, a feeble attempt to lighten the mood, but it quickly faded when Bakugou's fist connected with his abdomen. "Sheet!" Kirishima exclaimed, hunching over in pain, clutching his stomach. Bakugou barged past Kirishima and entered the apartment without a word, leaving Kirishima to close and lock the door behind them. The red-haired hero winced as his abdomen throbbed with the residual pain of Bakugou's blow. The ash-blonde hero stood near the entrance, hands on his hips, and confronted Kirishima with a stern gaze. "What the hell did you need me to come here for?" he asked, irritation evident in his voice. A nervous chuckle escaped Kirishima's lips, his fingers fidgeting anxiously. So I was searching the area for additional evidence to give to the police, and I heard a baby crying in a dark alley. So I may or may not have taken the baby home with me," Kirishima admitted, his words causing Bakugou's face to morph from shock to anger. "You're telling me you brought a DMN baby here? Are you stupid?" Bakugou shouted, his voice reverberating in the room. Kirishima raised a finger to his lips, shushing Bakugou in an attempt to calm the situation. Bakugou rolled his eyes and crossed his arms, clearly unimpressed. "Why didn't you just hand the DMN brat over to the cops?" he demanded, his voice laced with frustration. Because I felt something when I saw the baby," Kirishima began, his voice softer, more earnest. "Follow me." With those words, Kirishima turned and walked towards the living area, beckoning Bakugou to follow. There, on the couch, the baby slept peacefully, undisturbed by the commotion caused by their argument. Kirishima crouched down beside the baby, his gaze fixed on the tiny, slumbering face. Bakugou stared in disbelief, his anger momentarily forgotten. "Are you shitting me right now?" he growled. Kirishima remained transfixed by the baby, a sense of connection coursing through his veins. He had cared for many infants before, but this was different. There was an unexplainable bond between them. "Come here," Kirishima urged, his voice barely above a whisper. "What? No." Bakugou protested, his guards still up. "Trust me," Kirishima insisted, his tone carrying a hint of vulnerability. Reluctantly, Bakugou obliged and approached Kirishima, crouching down beside him. Both heroes gazed at the sleeping baby, their hearts stirred by an unfamiliar tenderness. Bakugou couldn't help but reach out and touch the baby's cheek, marveling at its softness. A surge of electricity coursed through his veins, and he found himself captivated by the child. "I know you felt something too," Kirishima said, breaking the silence. "I felt like I had to protect him from the dangers of the world. That's why I didn't give him to the police. And when he opened his eyes, I felt something more. I just can't describe the feeling." Bakugou hummed in response, his mind grappling with conflicting emotions. He stood up, distancing himself from the baby, and frowned at Kirishima. "You still should have given it to the police, despite feeling some DMN connection. This kid isn't even yours. Give him to the DMN police station." "But Bakugou knows what they'll do to him." Kirishima's tone rose involuntarily, his concern for the baby breaking through. "Dimene Kiri. You're a hero, not a babysitter. Take him to the police station, end of discussion." But their exchange was interrupted by the baby's cries, a consequence of their heated argument. Kirishima's gaze fell upon the distressed infant, and he felt a pang of guilt. Bakugou acted on instinct, picking up the baby and gently soothing him in his arms. "Don't cry anymore, little brat. It's okay," Bakugou whispered, using his finger to wipe away the baby's tears. The crying ceased, and the baby opened his teary eyes. Bakugou couldn't bring himself to let go, captivated by the enchanting mix of crimson and ruby in the baby's gaze. The child gripped Bakugou's finger, and an inexplicable bond formed between them. A sassy hum escaped Kirishima's lips, and he shot a knowing glance at Bakugou. The baby tugged at Bakugou's costume, prompting a puzzled response from the blonde hero. What the hell is wrong with you?" Bakugou grumbled, gently removing the baby's hand from his attire. The baby whined and reached for Bakugou's chest. "Wait," Kirishima began quietly. "Bakugou, take off your shirt." "What the F did you just say?" "Just take off your diamond shirt." Bakugou frowned but complied, removing his sweaty shirt and tossing it aside. "Oh, what the do I have to take it off for?" he demanded, glaring at Kirishima. "Okay, now pick him up again." "What the F are you getting at?" Bakugou asked, a tinge of impatience in his voice. When Bakugou held the baby in his arms, something unexpected happened. The baby latched onto Bakugou's NPL. Bakugou's mouth fell open, disbelief etched across his face. Kirishima erupted into laughter in the background, thoroughly amused by Bakugou's reaction. "Oi, I'm a guy. You're not getting milk from my pecs, buddy," Bakugou stated, staring down at the baby suckling on his NPL. The baby continued to nurse, and Bakugou grew increasingly perplexed. What was the baby sking on? But it was evident that something was being drawn out. After a few minutes, the baby released Bakugou's swollen NPL, and the blonde hero burped him before placing him back on the couch. Bakugou stared at his left NPL in shock and squeezed it, causing white fluid to trickle down his torso. His mouth hung agape as he attempted to process what had just occurred. "What the F came out of my NPL, Kirishima?" Bakugou exclaimed, his voice a mix of bewilderment and frustration. "That I don't know. Maybe BRST milk." Kirishima responded, his laughter subsiding. "BRST milk? I'm a guy and I have a D-." Kirishima chuckled. "Why did you say it like that? Come on, you're going to startle the baby again. I think it's safe to say this baby has a connection with us, too, if he seeking your NPL, bro." Bakugou glared at the redhead and scoffed, his attention returning to the peacefully sleeping baby. "What are we going to do?" he sighed. Kirishima scratched the back of his head, pondering their options. "Maybe we should keep him? I mean, we both feel something for this baby," he suggested. They both knew it was a reckless idea, but the thought of surrendering the baby to the authorities was unbearable. If they were going to keep him, they needed a plan. It was undoubtedly a daunting task, but life was about taking risks and getting one's hands dirty. Besides, Midoriya, Todoroki, Kaminari, and Siro had children of their own. They could seek advice if needed. "So, are we keeping him or not?" Bakugou asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "I want to keep him, but do you?" Kirishima replied, shrugging. Bakugou gazed at the sleeping baby, his resolve wavering. "I don't FNG know. We're both heroes. We don't have time to take care of a baby." "Yeah, I know. Maybe we should take him to the hospital for a DNA test to find out who his parents are. Since we're not dating, you don't have to watch him all the time." Bakugou rolled his eyes and snorted. "You think I'm going to let you watch this kid by yourself? You don't even know how to cook." "But I agree with the DNA test," he conceded. Kirishima smiled and nodded. They had a long road ahead of them, full of challenges and uncertainties. Luck seemed to have deserted them on that particular day. It all started with Bakugou spending the night at Kirishima's apartment, only to be awakened in the middle of the night by a crying baby with a wet blanket. Then, they had to endure a 2-day wait for the DNA results to come back. It felt utterly ridiculous to even have to take a DNA test to determine if the child was theirs or not, considering the fact that boys couldn't give birth. Inside the store, Bakugou allowed the baby to choose its own toys, which turned out to be surprisingly few. It seemed the little one didn't have extravagant desires, settling for a couple of stuffed animals and a blanket. Bakugou had brought along 95,000 yen for no apparent reason, perhaps thinking Kirishima might need some money. He couldn't fault his own preparedness. However, the outing took an unexpected turn when Midoriya stumbled upon them. "Kaken?" Midoriya's voice held confusion as his green eyes fell upon the baby in Bakugu's arms. "Why are you in a toy store, and since when do you have a kid?" He directed his gaze at the infant, who seemed to draw Tazumi's attention as well. "It's complicated. How's your brat?" Bakugu replied, his tone guarded. "Tazumi is fine. Good job catching that villain. Shoto and I couldn't catch her before. Her quirk is how we ended up with this little one." Bakuga's eyes widened at the revelation. "Wait, what? What's her quirk?" "Not sure about the name, but she's the reason Kaminari and Siro have twins, Shoto and I have Tazumi, Ishido and Uraraka have a kid, and Yaoyorozu and Jair have a child too. Did you and Kirishima get hit?" Bakugu nodded, unable to trust his own voice to respond. Midoriya's eyes widened, and he looked down at the baby in Bakugu's arms. "Then that baby is yours. Was it near the battle?" Midoriya inquired. "I don't FNG know. Ask Shitty Hair. But probably. He's 2 months old." "Oh, congrats." Tazumi was a newborn in November. Now it's the first day of March. He's 5 months old. Midoriya smiled and Bakugu hummed, glancing down at the baby skin on its thumb. The sight made Bakugu cringe, but it also evoked a giggle from the infant. Midoriya couldn't help but be awestruck, observing the interaction between the two babies. Tazumi seemed interested in the small brown-skinned baby with a pacifier in his. The significance didn't hit Midoriya until Tazumi reached out to the other child. He wondered why Tazumi was drawn to Bakugu's kid. "Well, I should go," Midoriya said, preparing to leave. "Good luck, Kaken." Bakugu rolled his eyes, feeling relieved that the encounter was over. He paid for their purchases and waited at the food court for Kirishima. However, the baby started tugging at Bakugu's V-neck shirt and whining softly. Lost in his phone, Bakugu failed to notice the baby's distress. Soon, the whining turned into full-fledged crying, drawing the attention of everyone around them. Bakugu, startled by the sudden noise, looked down at the infant in his arms. Why was it crying? Was it bored? Missing Kirishima, perhaps? What could be the reason for this baby's tears? And why was it causing such a scene? Frustrated by the unwanted attention, Bakugu realized the cause when he noticed the baby's hand. Alright, I hear ya, Bakugu mumbled, standing up with the bag of items. "Stop crying. I'll feed you." However, the baby's crying persisted. Bakugu, his hearing aid set to a low volume, couldn't fully grasp the intensity of the crying, but it was still quite loud. After fruitlessly searching for a vacant restroom, Bakugu gave up and headed to his car for privacy. This baby was starting to tarnish his DMN reputation. Unlocking his black 2019 Toyota Camry, Bakugu settled in the back seat with the baby. Making sure no one was around, he proceeded to BRCFD the child. The baby latched onto Bakugu's left NPL, and a sense of relief washed over him as the cries subsided. The last thing he needed was one of his fans witnessing this act, as it would not only raise questions but also be incredibly embarrassing. Just as he began to relax, a knock on the car window jolted Bakugu's attention to Kirishima. Narrowing his intense red eyes, Bakugu watched as Kirishima entered the driver's seat with a sizable box, a few bags, and a car seat. Clearly, he had gone shopping. "Seems like the little guy was hungry, huh?" Kirishima teased, amused by the situation. Bakugu let out an exasperated sigh. He caused a whole demon scene. "Couldn't find an empty bathroom and nearly made me take out my hearing aids," he grumbled, closing his eyes and handing Kirishima the car keys. The drive back to Bakugu's apartment was long, and by the time they arrived, the baby had fallen asleep. That was a relief. As the baby slumbered in Bakugu's room, he and Kirishima engaged in a conversation. "So, you think the baby is ours?" Deka said that, "Not me. I'm just repeating what he said. I won't believe it until we have proof." Kirishima nodded, taking a bite of an apple. "Can we give him a name? I don't want to keep calling him baby." Bakugu shrugged. "I don't give a f-. What do you want to name him? Kirishima Jr.? Kirishima laughed at the suggestion. "Of course not," he replied, smiling. I was thinking of Kimi. That sounds like a girl's name, Bakugou commented, his brows furrowing. Kirishima hummed, pondering for a moment. Then, snapping his fingers, he proudly exclaimed, Keijo. Keijo? Sounds like that demon chicken Kigo. But I like it. Kirishima pouted, pleadingly. Please. Whatever. Keijo it is, Bakugou acquiesced, dismissing Kirishima with a wave of his hand. He found himself staring at the ceiling, grappling with questions. What if the baby was indeed his? What would it mean for his relationship with Kirishima? Could they still be friends, given the circumstances? Bakugou's mind spiraled with these thoughts, overthinking the situation. It probably bothered Kirishima just as much, but it was hard to tell. Kirishima appeared calmer about it. Why was Bakugou the only one freaking out? Diamen, a drink would help. A beer or some whiskey, perhaps. But he had to remain sober, just in case Keijo needed feeding. He didn't want to harm the baby by consuming alcohol. Sighing, Bakugou lifted his head and glanced at the TV screen, where a comedy movie had captured Kirishima's attention. Feeling hungry, Bakugou decided to make some food. After all, he had nothing else to do except wait for the DNA results. Well, that was his plan until crying interrupted his preparations. Bakugou groaned and threw his head back. Kiri, you handle that. Kirishima promptly jumped to his feet and hurried to the bedroom. The crying had become concerning at this point. The door creaked open, and Kirishima found the infant sprawled out on the bed, crying loudly. What could be wrong? Was the baby hungry again? Kirishima swiftly entered the room and gently lifted the infant into his arms, his heart breaking at the sight of the little one's tears. The baby's eyes were tightly shut, wrinkles forming at the corners, and fat crocodile tears streamed down its chubby, brown-skinned cheeks. Shoo, it's okay. It's okay, Kirishima murmured, rocking Keijo in his arms, waiting for him to calm down so he could assess the situation. Unfortunately, the baby continued to cry. A sad frown appeared on Kirishima's face, his bottom lip poking out slightly. Rocking didn't seem to be working. What could be upsetting the little one? Then he felt something squishy, a wet diaper. Of course, it needed changing. Changing a diaper should be simple, right? Bakugou had shown Kirishima how to do it just the day before, and he had successfully practiced on a doll. Now it was time to put his skills to the test. Kirishima grabbed the wet wipes from the nightstand and a fresh diaper from the small packet. Sitting the baby on the bed, Kirishima set to work. The baby squirmed as he changed its diaper, but Kirishima skillfully managed the task. He hardly noticed that Keijo had stopped crying. Just as he was about to secure the new diaper, a yellow stream shot from the infant's private area, aiming perfectly at Kirishima's face. Reacting swiftly, Kirishima recoiled, tasting urine on his tongue. Come on, man. Kirishima complained, wiping his mouth and examining the wet stain on his green shirt. The minute he had just bought that shirt. Keijo, on the other hand, found the situation hilarious, laughing uncontrollably. At least he was happy. Kirishima, however, was not thrilled about being urinated on. It was far from being one of his kiss. Finally, the stream subsided, leaving a towel beneath them soaked in urine. Letting out a sigh, Kirishima finished putting on the fresh diaper, despite having been urinated on. Kirishima carried Keijo on his hip and exited the bedroom, making his way to the living area. Just got set on, Kirishima chuckled, bouncing the baby gently on his hip. Bakugou noticed the conspicuous wet stain on Kirishima's shirt and snorted. Go take a DM shower. No need to tell me twice, Kirishima replied, grinning as he headed to the bathroom. Results day had arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable as Kirishima and Bakugou sat anxiously in room B143, awaiting the doctor's verdict. Keijo, their baby, was nestled in Bakugou's arms, wrapped snugly in a blanket. The little one sported a Winnie the Pooh outfit selected by Kirishima, while Bakugou had picked out a grenade-themed pacifier, reminiscent of his hero costume. Bakugou couldn't care less about what Kirishima had chosen, as long as it wasn't ugly as sheet. Surprisingly, Keijo seemed to be in a better mood today, not crying as much. That was definitely a positive sign, though nights were still a challenge. Kirishima sat beside Bakugou, engrossed in his phone, catching up on the latest news and events. A villain with a magnetic force quirk was causing havoc, necessitating both defensive and offensive strategies. The duo had work scheduled for tomorrow, presenting a predicament. Who would take care of Keijo in their absence? They couldn't leave the responsibility to chance. Kirishima would have to find a reliable babysitter. A firm knock on the door interrupted their thoughts, and the door creaked open to reveal a tall male doctor, holding a file. He entered the room quietly and closed the door behind him. "Good afternoon," the doctor greeted them. "I'm sure you guys are dying to know the results, huh?" A brief chuckle escaped his lips. Kirishima nodded, confirming their eagerness. The doctor's gaze shifted to the baby cradled in Bakugu's arms. "Okay, first things first, regardless of the results, are you both planning on keeping the child?" the doctor asked, his eyes focused on the two expectant fathers. Bakugou and Kirishima exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. While Kirishima was leaning towards keeping the child, Bakugou was still undecided due to the inherent dangers involved in parenthood. "We don't know yet," Kirishima replied, his voice betraying a hint of wavering. The doctor acknowledged their response and opened the file, scanning the contents with his piercing blue eyes. Moments later, his eyes widened, his eyebrows shot up in astonishment, and his lips pursed in surprise. "Wow, this is extraordinary," the doctor murmured, taken aback by the revelation. "What is it?" Bakugou asked cautiously. "Ichiro Kirishima, you are the father of the child," the doctor announced, looking up from the file. Kirishima couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was he Keijo's father? But he hadn't even lost his virginity yet. How was this possible? The doctor continued, his tone carrying a tinge of amusement. "Katsuki Bakugou, you are the father of the child as well." "What?" Bakugou exclaimed loudly. "What the hell do you mean? I didn't have issue with anyone. I'm just as puzzled as you are, but according to the X-rays we have of both you and Kirishima, your bodies have changed. You seem to have developed the ability to produce BRST milk, despite not being female. Could this change be related to the sudden appearance of the child?" Kirishima nodded, affirming the doctor's observation. "We were attacked by a villain 4 days ago. Deku told Bakugou that the villain's quirk involved creating babies. After we were hit, we found this little guy in a dark alley." The doctor nodded, closing the file. "So, the same thing happened to both of you. It seems the villain specifically targeted strong pro-heroes." He tilted his head thoughtfully. Bakugou gently bounced the baby in his lap, pondering the information. First Midoriya and Todoroki, then Yaozu and Jairu, followed by Kaminari and Shiro, and finally, Uraraka and Mina. Now it was his and Kirishima's turn. If the villain targeted strong pro-heroes, could Tamaki and Nijire be the next targets? What was the end goal of this villain? Although the villain was currently in custody, what if there was a clone out there, operating under their radar? Bakugou's mind began to overanalyze the situation once again. "Who knows?" the doctor sighed. "Well, congratulations on the baby. Have you decided on a name?" "Keijo," Bakugou replied with pride. The doctor noted the name down for official records. "Keijo what?" he inquired. Kirishima blinked, momentarily caught off guard, then shrugged. He turned to Bakugou, who answered with unwavering certainty, "Keijo Katsu Kirishima." The doctor hummed in acknowledgement and jotted down the name. "Are you two married or?" Both Kirishima and Bakugou blushed intensely. "And no, not yet," Kirishima stammered. "Actually, we haven't discussed our relationship in detail. Right now, we're just friends." "Just friends?" "For now," Bakugou added, an unfamiliar feeling of hope stirring within him. His heart fluttered, filled with a newfound sense of joy. If they decided to keep Keijo, what sacrifices would they have to make? Suddenly, a question sprang to Bakugou's mind as he observed Keijo's beautiful brown skin, contrasting with their lighter complexions. If Keijo is truly ours, why does he have a different skin color? Bakugou asked, seeking an explanation. The doctor, well aware of the answer, replied, "Does anyone in your family have brown skin?" Bakugou shook his head, while Kirishima nodded. "My great-grandma had brown skin." "Well, there you have it. Keijo must have inherited that beautiful skin tone from your great-grandma. It's perfectly fine. His uniqueness is a testament to his lineage. Both Kirishima and Bakugou nodded, accepting the explanation. The doctor then excused himself, leaving the room. Silence filled the air, intensifying the confusion swirling in their minds. Bakugou secured Keijo in his car seat, but the baby began to cry, refusing to be put down. Kirishima leaned over the passenger seat, offering Keijo a teddy bear, but the baby didn't take it. He wants to be held, Bakugou informed Kirishima as he started the engine. Kirishima made an O shape with his mouth and settled back into his seat. Maybe I should hold him? He suggested to Bakugou. Bakugou pulled out of the parking lot. Nope, it's almost his nap time anyway. Let the fucker cry himself to sleep. Upon reaching Bakugou's apartment, Keijo cried himself to sleep, allowing Bakugou to gently place him in the crib they had purchased the day before. Finally, the two of them could breathe and savor a moment of tranquility. We need to discuss what we're going to do. We're both Keijo's parents, and I don't want to give him up, Kirishima voiced his thoughts. Bakugou looked at Kirishima, exhaustion evident in his sigh. I don't know, he responded wearily. As pro-heroes, we have demanding schedules. We have patrols tomorrow and the day after. I don't want to give up Keijo either, but it's challenging. Moreover, our friendship is in disarray. It's FNG stressful. I understand, Bakugou. We need to find a place to live together because commuting won't be ideal, and I don't want Keijo to grow up in separate households. Another challenge was added to their already complex situation. Firstly, as pro-heroes, their schedules were packed. Secondly, they were uncertain about whether they should keep Keijo. Thirdly, the distance between their residences would complicate matters. Fourthly, their friendship was currently strained. And lastly, they had no one reliable to watch over Keijo. Bakugou couldn't handle this level of stress. What were they going to do? Who would take care of Keijo? It was at that moment that Bakugou thought of his parents. They could look after Keijo. I know someone who can take care of Keijo, Bakugou stated abruptly. Who? Kirishima inquired. My old hag and old man, Bakugou replied. I don't give a f whether they're both available tomorrow or not. We just need someone to watch over Keijo until our shifts are done. Great idea, Explosion Boy. Shut the f up. In the middle of the night. The tranquility of the moment enveloped him as he lay there, awaiting the ebb and flow of his dreams. A cozy blanket cocooned his body, and he felt the weight of warm arms encircling his waist. Wait a minute. Arms? Who the hell? Bakugou's eyes shot open, greeted by the darkness. He lifted the blanket slightly, revealing strong tan arms adorned with scars wrapped around his waist. Casting a glance over his shoulder, Bakugou beheld Kirishima peacefully slumbering beside him. Bakugou had allowed Kirishima to share his bed, though it was purely platonic. Warmth tinged his cheeks, and he gently nibbled on his lower lip. The presence of another body in his bed provided solace on chilly nights such as these. Glancing at the alarm clock, the time read 4 in the morning. Bakugou sighed, realizing sleep was unlikely to visit him anytime soon. He sat up, deciding to choose Keijo's attire for the day. Silently slipping out of Kirishima's embrace, he grabbed a black duffel bag and left the room, making his way to the spare bedroom where Keijo slept. Approaching the tall black dresser housing the baby's clothes, Bakugou moved with utmost stealth and efficiency as he gathered the necessary garments. Spare diapers, clothing, wet wipes, bottles, pacifiers, a backup blanket in case the first one went missing, stuffed animals, and shoes all were swiftly acquired. The process didn't take long, and to Bakugou's surprise, his mother agreed happily to look after Keijo while they were at work. He should appreciate her efforts more and show her greater respect. A soft coo emanated from the crib, capturing the attention of the spiky-haired blonde. Walking over to the crib, he discovered Keijo was awake. It seemed his attempt at silence hadn't been entirely successful. Bakugou picked up the baby, cradling him gently and swaying from side to side. Hey there, little dynamite, he greeted in hushed tones. Keijo cooed in response, locking his gaze onto Bakugou's eyes. Bakugou noted that the diaper didn't appear to be soiled, so no immediate need for a change. "How was your sleep?" he inquired, playfully booping Keijo's nose, eliciting a giggle from the brown-skinned baby. Keijo tugged at Bakugu's t-shirt, seeking access to his NPL for feeding. Of course, he was hungry. This boy seemed to do nothing but eat. Mentally making a note to purchase baby formula, as bursting in public was denting his pride, Bakugu made his way to the living area, switching on a lamp. Settling down on the couch, he allowed Keijo to latch on and nourish himself. To be completely honest, the experience was quite uncomfortable. There was a considerable amount of discomfort in his NPL. Bakugu always held Keijo in his left arm, so the baby naturally gravitated toward his left NPL. However, Bakugu decided to switch Keijo to his right side, giving his left NPL a chance to heal. Keijo didn't appear too thrilled with the sudden change, but he adjusted to it and resumed his feeding. Bakugu let out a tired sigh, realizing he would be in this position for a while. Hopefully, Kirishima wouldn't awaken, as this bursting ordeal was always rather embarrassing. Why was he the one playing the role of the mother in their dynamic? Shouldn't it be Kirishima instead? A familiar nickname echoed in his mind, Bakudides. His friends had bestowed that moniker upon him due to his well-developed pectoral muscles, but he hadn't considered them large enough to be likened to a motherly figure. Yawning, a sense of weariness overtook him as he gazed down at Keijo, who blissfully enjoyed his meal. "You're going to be the death of me, you brat," Bakugu playfully remarked, his laughter trailing off. Perhaps, he mused, keeping Keijo wouldn't be such a terrible prospect after all. The sleek black 2019 Toyota Camry smoothly pulled into the driveway of a modern three-story house, surrounded by a charming array of rose bushes and delicate white tulips. Bakugu shifted the car into park and opened the door, directing Kirishima to retrieve Keijo before making his way toward the front entrance. With a firm knock on the dark wooden door, Bakugu patiently waited for it to swing open. Before long, it did, and he found himself engulfed in a warm embrace. "Katsuki!" exclaimed the spiky ash-blonde woman with excitement. "How are you, you bratty beach?" She playfully put Bakugu in a headlock and playfully noogied him. Bakugu squirmed and flailed his arms, finally managing to escape the headlock, his spiky hair now even more tousled. "I hate you," Bakugu retorted, glaring at his mother as he attempted to fix his hair to the best of his abilities. Mitsuki, the older woman, laughed and turned her attention to Kirishima, who approached carrying a black duffel bag and cradling Keijo in his arms. "Hello, Mrs. Bakugu," greeted Kirishima with a smile. "It's been a while, huh?" "Kirishima. Miss you, darling," replied Mitsuki, her smile growing wider as she shifted her focus to the red-haired youth and the baby in his arms. "And who might this cutie be?" "This is Keijo," answered Kirishima. Mitsuki's eyes sparkled with delight, her love for babies evident. She was an amazing mother and great with kids, although Bakugu didn't quite fit into that equation due to his brash personality. Mitsuki made a silly face, eliciting giggles from Keijo. "What a cutie!" Mitsuki beamed. "Come to Grandma Mitsuki," she cooed in a babyish tone, reaching out her arms for Keijo. The baby hesitated but eventually lifted his arms, allowing Mitsuki to cradle him. Mitsuki smiled brightly, showering Keijo's soft, chubby cheeks with kisses. "He's so cute and beautiful. I love his hair color." "It's lovely," she exclaimed to the two young men. "And his skin color complements his whole appearance." Bakugu scoffed and rolled his eyes. Yeah, he responded bluntly. "We're the Diamond parents, of course, he's gonna look good." Mitsuki gave him an annoyed expression before taking the bag from Kirishima. "I'll take good care of him. Now run along before you both are late." Before they could respond, Mitsuki closed the door and locked it. She walked down the hall, entering the spacious living room with its modern decor. A large milk chocolate-colored sectional sofa dominated the space, facing a flat-screen TV. A fuzzy gray rug adorned the floor, while a glass table stood in the center of the room. Two end tables flanked the TV, and a pot of plants added a touch of greenery to the far corner. The dark red and gold curtains provided an elegant finishing touch. Mitsuki placed the bag on the floor and settled down on the couch, with Keijo on her lap. "Okay, what do you want to do?" she asked the baby. Let's watch Disney Junior. Mickey Mouse is probably on. She grabbed the TV remote and turned on the television. For the first few hours, everything went surprisingly well, except for the occasional bouts of crying from Keijo for no apparent reason. Masaru sighed, finally conceding defeat. Keijo didn't need a diaper change. Mitsuki had fed him his bottle and burped him, and he had his toys. So, what could be the problem? Did he miss his parents? Masaru noticed Keijo's yawn, and suddenly, it all made sense. Keijo was tired. Masaru gently scooped him up and rocked him, humming a lullaby he used to sing to Katsuki when he was a baby. Slowly but surely, Keijo began to calm down, allowing the soothing voice to lull him into a deep, peaceful sleep. Masaru breathed a sigh of relief and carefully placed the baby on the couch. Mitsuki smiled softly and whispered, "I love him." "I do too," Masaru replied in a hushed tone. "He reminds me of Katsuki when he was a baby." Mitsuki nodded and stretched. "Just watching him sleep is making me tired." She walked over to the couch and settled down next to Keijo, lying on it. "Wake me up if something happens or don't." She lazily saluted Masaru and closed her eyes. The brunette chuckled and covered the two peacefully slumbering figures with a blanket. He made his way to the kitchen to grab a snack when he heard his phone ringing. Retrieving it from his pocket, he saw Bakugu's name on the screen. Smiling at his son's concern for the little one, Masaru answered the call. "Yes, Katsuki," he said. "How's Keijo doing? Is he causing any trouble?" Masaru softly chuckled. "Not really. He's taking a nap with your mother. Are you planning on explaining how you ended up with the baby?" A sigh came from the other end of the line. "It was a Quirk incident," Bakugu explained. "A villain had a baby-making Quirk and hit Kirishima. That's how Keijo came into the picture. We haven't figured out what we're going to do yet. We haven't really talked about it." Masaru hummed thoughtfully, biting his lip. "Katsuki, do you love the baby?" Silence followed. The line remained quiet. "Katsuki?" Yeah, Bakugu replied, his voice low. "I love him." "And what about Kirishima?" "He does too, obviously," Bakugu stated matter-of-factly. Masaru paused for a moment before speaking slowly. "Then, why don't you consider keeping him? Your mother and I would be more than happy to help take care of him when you and Kirishima are busy." "It's complicated right now. Keeping the baby might jeopardize my friendship with Kirishima," Bakugu muttered. I don't want to ruin what we have." Witnessing Bakugu's caution and vulnerability was a new experience. He genuinely cared about his platonic relationship with Kirishima. Masaru found it endearing how much Bakugu valued his friend, but was he overlooking something? Masaru chuckled softly. "Katsuki, your friendship has the potential to evolve into something more significant, something even more important." "What do you mean?" "A romantic relationship?" "Yes," Masaru answered. "You came out as demisexual at UA, so what if you let your emotions guide you and see where it takes you? I sense a connection between you and Kirishima." Once again, Bakugu fell into silence, likely contemplating his father's words. Masaru hoped he hadn't unintentionally hurt his son's feelings. "I'll think about it," Bakugu finally responded quietly. Masaru smiled, relieved that he hadn't caused any harm. "Good. When are you picking Keijo up?" Masaru asked. "Around 5. Thanks for watching over Keijo. I'll talk to Kirishima about it." "You're welcome." Masaru beamed. The fact that Bakugu expressed gratitude warmed his heart. "Stay safe." Emchim. The call ended, and Masaru couldn't help but feel a surge of pride as a father. He was glad to know that Bakugu was willing to consider his words and think things through. Time skip. "Where's Grandma Mitsuki?" Mitsuki chimed, playfully covering her face with her hands. She waited for a moment, building anticipation, before removing her hands and revealing a funny expression. Keijo erupted into giggles, and Mitsuki joined in. She quickly covered her face again. "Where's Grandma Mitsuki?" After a few more seconds, she removed her hands once more, this time making a silly face that had Keijo laughing and clapping his tiny hands. Masaru couldn't resist capturing the delightful moment on video, planning to share it with his son later. As the clock struck 5, Bakugou arrived to pick up Keijo. Mitsuki didn't want to let the little one go just yet. They were having such a wonderful time together. Katsuki, let me keep him for today. You both have to work tomorrow anyway. Mitsuki pleaded, holding the baby close to her chest. She did have a valid point. Both Bakugou and Kirishima had work obligations the next day. Fine, the blonde sighed. Whatever. Bakugou leaned down and planted a tender kiss on Keijo's head before reluctantly leaving. Kirishima, on the other hand, took his sweet time saying goodbye. He showered Keijo's face with goodbye kisses, cherishing each moment. Bye, little buddy, the redhead whispered, placing one final kiss on the baby's forehead before departing. Mitsuki and Masaru stood at the door, waving farewell as Bakugou and Kirishima drove off. Kirishima, Bakugou called out, his voice tinged with a mixture of seriousness and concern. The redhead emitted a soft hum, sensing the gravity of the moment. We need to talk. Bakugou parked his car in an empty lot and turned off the engine. He turned to face Kirishima, his heart racing with uncertainty. How should he approach this? What about their friendship? Why should he listen to his dad's advice? It seemed foolish. After all, they couldn't possibly be anything more than friends. This conversation felt pointless. So, what did you want to talk about? Kirishima asked, tilting his head slightly as he faced Bakugou. Bakugou simply shrugged. What the hell are we going to do? I'm so stressed out from overthinking this sheet that it's giving me a DMN headache. We have a kid, and we're not even a couple. What the f are we? Hey, calm down, Kirishima interrupted softly, placing a gentle hand on the stressed blonde's shoulder. It's going to be okay. No, it's not. Bakugou yelled, smacking Kirishima's hand away. I'm so exhausted and drained. I don't know what to do. Kirishima's tone turned tender and sweet. Hey, why are you saying I? What about we, or us? You don't have to do everything alone, man. Just like I'll always be here for you, through thick and thin. So, don't stress out because I'm here. Talk to me. What's bothering you? Kirishima's words had an inexplicable effect on Bakugou, making him long for a comforting embrace and encouraging words. Bakugou hugged himself tightly and let out a sigh. I want to keep Keijo but? I don't want us to raise him separately. I don't want Keijo shuttling back and forth between my apartment and yours. Kirishima's face lit up with a smile. So, what are you suggesting, explosion boy? He teased, leaning closer to Bakugou's face. Bakugou's cheeks reddened, and he turned his head away from the redhead. I'm saying, let's find an apartment together. Somewhere close to both our agencies, he blurted out, his ears slightly flushed. Kirishima chuckled and gently made Bakugou look at him. You want us to live together, huh? That's a great idea. We can start looking for one tomorrow if you want. Bakugou playfully smacked the redhead's head and agreed to go apartment hunting the next day. However, one question continued to nag at him: where did their relationship stand? Were they still friends, or could they become something more? It troubled Bakugou a little. What about our friendship? Bakugou whispered. What about it? We have a kid, Dums. Are we still just friends? Do you want us to be friends? Kirishima asked, his tone carrying a hint of disappointment and sadness. Bakugou wasn't even sure what he wanted anymore. Everything felt so stressful and exhausting to contemplate. They could still be friends and take care of their child, right? That was a possibility. I don't know anymore, Bakugou sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Do you still want to be friends? Kirishima's answer took Bakugou by surprise. If I'm being honest, not really, he replied. What? Kirishima didn't want to be friends with Bakugou anymore? Was it because of the baby? Bakugou felt his world come crashing down. His face reflected a mix of shock and hurt. Kirishima saw the look and felt the need to explain further. I don't want us to raise Keijo as just friends, Bakugou. I want us to be something more. What the F are you trying to say, Beach? You're so dense, it's adorable, Kirishima chuckled, gently placing his fingers under Bakugou's chin and drawing him closer for a tender kiss. Their lips met in a gentle, perfect embrace. Bakugou was stunned. Kirishima was kissing him. But what did it mean? Kirishima pulled away, giggling at Bakugou's bewildered expression. Are you all right, explosion boy? Kirishima asked, playfully tilting his head. Bakugou, honestly, was at a loss for words. He didn't dislike the kiss, but it had taken him by surprise. I'm effing fine, Bakugou mumbled, resting his hands on the steering wheel. You're just incredibly weird. Weird? All I did was kiss you to show you what I wanted to say. Yeah, well, the average person would just say it. Bakugou, what I'm trying to say is that I want us to be more than friends. I want us to date. I've liked you ever since you, but I never confessed because it didn't seem like you had feelings for anyone. So, I buried those emotions deep inside. Clearly that didn't work, and now? Well, forget I said anything. Kirishima put his hands in his lap and looked down, trying to hide his embarrassment. I finish what you were saying. Let me hear it, Bakugou interjected, his voice hushed as he stared at the redhead. Kirishima smiled gratefully and continued, I genuinely. No, I love you, Bakugou. If you want to be together, we can take it slow, start with hugs and high fives, then progress to dates, and eventually longer hugs. Bakugou blinked, processing the confession. Where the hell are the cuddles and kisses in that, dumbass? Kirishima chuckled. They'll come soon enough. Just be patient. Sure. A complete week had passed since Keijo's arrival, and things were gradually falling into place for the couple. Aside from Keijo's occasional crying, everything was going smoothly. They had managed to find an apartment that conveniently accommodated both of them and moved in just yesterday. Although they were still in the process of settling in, they had successfully transported the majority of their belongings to the spacious apartment. With 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a generous kitchen, a medium-sized living area, and a balcony, the apartment provided ample space for their needs. Bakugou, in particular, developed a fondness for the kitchen, relishing the opportunity to showcase his culinary skills in such a well-appointed environment. Meanwhile, Kirishima's favorite room was the gym they had set up in one of the spare bedrooms. They had even transformed the 4th bedroom into a shared office, creating a versatile space for both of them to utilize. Overall, life had proven to be less stressful than anticipated, with a decent level of comfort and ease. Presently, Kirishima found himself seated on the couch, cradling Keijo in his arms while they both watched an episode of the children's program Octonauts on Disney Junior. Keijo was particularly captivated by the show, his excitement evident as he clapped his hands and attempted to pronounce the names of the various sea creatures, albeit in an endearing manner that came out as Gu Gu Jiega. Bakugou, occupied in the kitchen, prepared a bottle for Keijo, responding to the baby's restlessness. Carrying the bottle, he made his way into the living area and handed it to Kirishima. Thanks, he was just about to fuss again. Kirishima expressed his gratitude with a smile. Bakugou nodded, settling down beside Kirishima. Keijo happily accepted the bottle and began drinking from it. By the way, Deku said he would be coming over, Bakugou mentioned, his voice somewhat muted. Kirishima lifted his gaze from Keijo, his curiosity piqued. Midoriya is coming? What's the purpose of his visit? Kirishima tilted his head inquisitively. I have no idea. He mentioned he would be here in a few moments, Bakugou replied, his tone nonchalant. Kirishima hummed, shifting his attention back to Keijo. As he held the tiny bundle of joy in his arms, Kirishima couldn't help but reflect on the uniqueness of their situation. It was surreal to think that he and Bakugou had embarked on this journey together, becoming parents despite the unexpectedness of it all. Kirishima cherished the bond they had formed and felt an overwhelming love for their child. However, a concern nagged at him. Keijo seemed to be growing up in isolation, lacking siblings or friends. Kirishima couldn't shake off the feeling that he didn't want Keijo to face the challenges of solitude. Just as he began contemplating these thoughts, a knock on the door disrupted his musings. Bakugou rose to open the door, muttering, "Here we go," before revealing a smiling Midoriya, holding a baby in his arms. "Hey, Kaken." Midoriya greeted with a cheerful smile. "How are you?" "I'm fine," Bakugou responded, eyeing the bag hanging from Midoriya's shoulder. "What's with the bag?" Midoriya's smile remained unwavering as he stepped inside. Glancing around the spacious apartment, he remarked, It feels so cozy. You must have received Kirishima's assistance in making this place look presentable. Kirishima chuckled, rising from the couch with Keijo in his arms. Hey Deku. And who is this little one? Kirishima asked, looking down at the baby in Midoriya's arms. Midoriya beamed with pride. This is Tazumi, my son. Say hello, Tazumi, he coaxed, eliciting a shy giggle from the baby. Bakugou raised an eyebrow, observing the interaction. Why did you bring him here, Deku? Midoriya maintained his composure, responding calmly, I brought him here to give him an opportunity to make a new friend. Tazumi hasn't quite connected with Yaoyorozu and Jiraiya's child or Ashido and Uraraka's child, so I thought Keijo might be a good match. Kirishima chimed in, offering a supportive perspective. That sounds reasonable. Let's see how they get along. Midoriya gently placed Tazumi on the floor, observing the interaction between the two babies. They gazed at each other intently, creating a momentary pause. Kirishima expressed concern. It seems like Tazumi isn't interested in Keijo. Midoriya explained. Tazumi has a habit of observing others to determine if they are trustworthy enough to be his friend. Although it might seem unusual, it's not a negative trait. This is the longest I've seen him engage in this process. Bakugou let out a sigh, reclining on the couch. Kirishima, seizing the moment, playfully grabbed the remote control and held it like a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ultimate stare down. Who will make the first move? Opponent A or Opponent B? He exclaimed, mimicking Present Mix's enthusiastic voice. Midoriya chuckled, and Bakugou playfully nudged him. Meanwhile, Tazumi and Keijo continued their locked gaze. Minutes ticked by, prompting Kirishima to whisper, any day now. Midoriya interrupted the suspense, pointing excitedly at Tazumi. Look, he exclaimed, as Tazumi began crawling towards Keijo. Kirishima's face lit up, resuming his announcer-like voice. Opponent A is on the move. Keijo observed Tazumi's approach with curiosity, eventually responding with giggles and clapping. Tazumi reciprocated, leading to a harmonious exchange of babbling sounds. It was as if they had developed their own unique language. And they have connected. Kirishima cheered. Midoriya, brimming with joy, exclaimed, I'm so happy. Tazumi has found a friend. Kirishima noted the resemblance between the baby's bond and Midoriya's friendship with Bakugou. This reminds me of your friendship with Bakugou, he remarked. Curious, Midoriya inquired, what do you mean? You two were childhood friends, right? Kirishima elaborated. It's only fitting for our children to become friends too. Midoriya's face brightened with realization. Oh yes, it would be wonderful if they could grow up as friends. Kirishima nodded in agreement. Bakugou interjected firmly, no. Surprised, both Kirishima and Midoriya exclaimed, no? The sudden outburst startled the babies, causing them to cry. Kirishima and Midoriya swiftly picked up their children, soothing them in their arms. Kirishima whispered gently to Keijo, it's okay, little buddy. Don't worry, we'll figure this out. Midoriya echoed the sentiment, soothing Tazumi. Sure, it's all right, Tazumi. We'll find a way for you to make friends. Bakugou sighed, his expression softening. Look, I'm not saying they can't be friends. I just don't want them to have the same messed-up friendship we had growing up. They deserve better. Kirishima and Midoriya exchanged understanding glances. You're right, Kaken, Midoriya admitted. They deserve a healthier and happier friendship than we had. Let's make sure we guide them in the right direction. Kirishima nodded in agreement. Absolutely. We'll create an environment where they can grow and learn together, free from the burdens we carried. With newfound determination, the trio set out to foster an environment of friendship and positivity for their children. As the babies gradually calmed down, they resumed their playful babbling, completely unaware of the heartfelt conversation taking place among their parents. Together, Kirishima, Bakugou, and Midoriya were determined to give their children the best opportunities for friendship and happiness. And as their babies continued to giggle and play, the three friends looked forward to the bright future that awaited their little ones. Time skip. 5 years later. Keijo sat cross-legged on the living room floor, engrossed in his imaginative play with action figures. In the adjacent kitchen, his parents diligently prepared a pre-dinner snack for him. Engaging in his make-believe world, Keijo animatedly maneuvered 2 action figures, complete with accompanying sound effects that simulated an intense battle. Regrettably, one of the figures slipped from his grasp, causing a visible frown to form on Keijo's face. This recurring occurrence had become rather commonplace due to his excessively sweaty hands. Despite this inconvenience, Keijo chose not to share his predicament with his parents, as it did not greatly trouble him. Resuming his play without delay, he retrieved the fallen figure and continued his captivating storyline. Suddenly, an unexpected sensation gripped Keijo's hands, a rising warmth that intensified rapidly. Alarmed, he halted his play and examined his perspiring palms with apprehension. The fiery sensation grew increasingly pronounced, prompting Keijo to seek respite in the bathroom. Eager to alleviate the discomfort, he fetched a small stool and positioned it near the sink, allowing him to reach the sink with ease. Turning on the cold water, Keijo submerged his hands, seeking solace in the soothing flow. To his dismay, the audible sizzling sound emitted by his hands elicited a slight wince. After a brief PRD spent immersing his hands in the refreshing water, Keijo gingerly dried them off. However, he soon found his arms beset by an insatiable itch, prompting him to simultaneously scratch both limbs. Abruptly, a searing pain consumed his arms, causing Keijo to gaze down in disbelief at his now bloodied extremities. His attention then shifted to his hands, which had transformed, hardening to an unfamiliar state. Overwhelmed by panic, tears welled up in Keijo's striking crimson eyes as he succumbed to anguish, his cries punctuating the air. In a matter of seconds, small sparks erupted from both of his rigid hands, intensifying his distress. "Daddy, Papa!" Keijo's desperate pleas echoed through the house as he sprinted out of the bathroom and descended the stairs, blood trailing behind him. The scorching heat emanating from his hands fueled the burgeoning sparks, their brightness and intensity growing by the moment. "Keijo!" Kirishima's concerned voice filled the room as he turned to face his son, only to be met with a sight that left him astounded. Kirishima's gaze fixated on Keijo's arms, stained with blood, and the flickering sparks emanating from the hardened hands. "Katsuki," Kirishima uttered, his voice laced with an uncharacteristic tremor, tugging gently at his spouse's sleeve to draw his attention. Startled by Kirishima's urgency, Bakugou swiftly turned towards his husband, confusion etching his features. His bewilderment swiftly dissipated upon following Kirishima's gaze, and he too was confronted with the same overwhelming sense of terror. "Keijo!" Bakugou's heart raced as he rushed to his son's side, dropping to his knees in front of him. "What happened?" I don't know. I was playing with my action figures, and then my hands got sweaty, and they started burning. I went to the bathroom to cool them down, and this happened." Keijo's tear-streaked face conveyed a mixture of fear and pain, his words punctuated by hiccups. Bakugou swiftly scooped Keijo into his arms, his mind racing as he grabbed his car keys. "Come on, we're going to the hospital." Kirishima, adorned in hastily slipped-on Crocs from the kitchen, quickly joined them, displaying a remarkable sense of urgency. "Try to stay calm, Keijo. Panicking will only worsen the situation," Bakugou advised with a firm yet gentle tone, settling into the driver's seat. Keijo attempted to compose himself, but the pain proved too overwhelming. Confusion and anguish consumed his thoughts. How had everything taken such a drastic turn? As Bakugou accelerated down the road, Kirishima reached over, securing Keijo in his arms and gently soothing their distressed child while desperately praying for a resolution to this unforeseen calamity. "Keijo," the nurse said soothingly, her voice filled with warmth as she finished wrapping up both of his arms. "You have shown remarkable bravery." A sweet smile adorned her face as she stepped back, her gaze shifting to Bakugou and Kirishima. "He's going to be fine. His quirk manifested at an unfortunate time, but the doctor will be here soon to provide further details," the nurse reassured them, bowing respectfully before leaving the room. Bakugou let out a sigh, his sympathetic eyes fixed on Keijo. "Are you okay, little buddy?" Kirishima asked softly, standing by Keijo's side. The young boy nodded slowly, contemplating whether he should reveal his prior signs of developing a quirk. But it seemed too late for that now. Normally, you'd show DMN signs before getting a quirk, Bakugou grumbled, to which Kirishima lightly reprimanded him with a playful hit. Kid-friendly language. Bakugou scoffed and retaliated with a gentle hit. Don't effing hit me. Katsuki. It slipped. Really? I showed signs of my quirk, Keijo confessed in a low tone, his head hung low. Both Bakugou and Kirishima turned their attention to him, intrigued by his revelation. What? Kirishima inquired. I showed signs of my quirk. My hands would get really sweaty, and they would harden up at random moments. I ignored them and kept it to myself. Kirishima let out a sigh and planted a gentle kiss on Keijo's forehead. You should have told us. Yeah, your dumbass papa is right. Katsuki. Sorry, that slipped too. Keijo couldn't help but giggle at his parents' playful argument. It was something he genuinely loved about them, how they could engage in a light-hearted dispute to make him feel better in any situation. It was comforting. The room fell silent when a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Come in, Kirishima called out. The door opened, revealing 3 males entering the room. Bakugou frowned and groaned audibly upon recognizing his childhood friend and his friend's husband, along with their son. Tazumi. Keijo's face lit up with a bright smile as he held out his arms towards the dual-colored-haired boy. Tazumi giggled and squirmed out of his dad's embrace. Keijo. Tazumi rushed over to the brown-skinned boy. What are you doing here? I got my quirk. Yay, I did too. I can produce ice if I try hard enough. Tazumi exclaimed excitedly. Keijo reciprocated the enthusiasm and shared how he discovered his quirk had manifested. Did they just let you guys in here? Kirishima asked, surprised by the unannounced visitors. Nope, we heard familiar yelling coming from here. Our room is next to yours, Midoriya replied with a nervous chuckle. Bakugou folded his arms and huffed. Your son manifested his quirk, too? Yeah, we're just here to get some calming medication for him, Midoriya explained, glancing at his son and Bakugou's son, engrossed in their quirk discussion. Izuku, we should go. The doctor is on his way, Todoroki mentioned, tapping Midoriya's shoulder. Midoriya nodded. Come on, Tazumi. Keijo's doctor is coming. You can see him tomorrow. Tazumi pouted and agreed, giving Keijo a tight hug before leaving with his parents. The doctor smiled at the 3 males before entering Keijo's room. Friends. Kirishima offered a sheepish smile with a short nod. Are you here to inform us about our son's quirk? Yes, Keijo Kirishima, correct? The doctor confirmed, reading the information on the clipboard. Yes, Kirishima replied. Well, he's somewhat similar to the pro-hero Shoto. Keijo possesses 2 quirks in one. He can generate explosions and harden his hands. The sweat from his hands allows him to reinforce his punches and utilize his explosions. However, controlling both quirks simultaneously will be challenging. Keijo can still employ both abilities individually, but using them together will require training. This quirk is often referred to as double trouble. You may use that name if you wish, the doctor explained. Bakugou and Kirishima exchanged worried glances before directing their attention back to Keijo, who shared their apprehension. The young boy was understandably concerned about the implications of his newfound quirk. Thank you, Kirishima expressed gratitude with a bow. You're welcome, Dynamite and Red Riot. I must say, I'm a fan of both of your heroic endeavors. Thank you for protecting us civilians, the doctor exclaimed, a hint of admiration in their voice. No need for. You're welcome, Bakugou proudly interrupted, a smug smirk forming on his face. Kirishima rolled his eyes, picked up Keijo, and joined Bakugou. Thank you very much. We'll take our leave now. Alright, take care. Teach him how to manage his quirk while maintaining composure. The scratches on his arms will likely scar due to their depth. Make sure to clean them regularly to prevent infections. Bakugou and Kirishima nodded in acknowledgement. With that, they left the room. Once they arrived home, Their first course of action was to clean up the dried blood that had accumulated since their departure. Keijo tidied his toys before retreating to his bedroom. He found himself devoid of appetite, still processing everything that had transpired. The notion of acquiring a quirk had never crossed his mind, and in some ways, it took him by surprise. The fact that his arms would bear scars only added to his distress. Keijo finished organizing his toys, wearing a somber expression as he looked down at his bandaged arms, throbbing with pain. It was regrettable how things had unfolded. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Keijo turned his head, observing both of his parents gazing at him. "Are you okay?" Kirishima asked, concern evident in his voice. Keijo responded with a shrug. "Look, I know this is a lot to process, but aren't you happy to have a quirk?" "Your papa and I certainly are," Bakugou stated, entering the room with his arms crossed. "Yeah, I guess." Keijo averted his gaze to the floor, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "It's just scary knowing that I have a quirk, sort of. But I'm happy." "Don't sound like it," Bakugou remarked, sitting down in front of his son, with Kirishima sitting beside him. Bakugou gently brushed his son's cheek with his index finger. "I just didn't like how everything turned out. I messed everything up. I am a burden to you." "I'm sorry," Keijo whispered, his voice filled with remorse. "Little buddy," Kirishima said softly, reaching out and pulling his son closer, embracing him between the two of them. "You should never apologize for that. You didn't do anything wrong. We're glad you shared your injuries with us instead of keeping them to yourself." Kirishima held Keijo tightly. Keijo nodded slowly, remaining silent. Bakugou let out a sigh and ruffled his son's hair. "Don't think you're a burden, idiot. We love you so much, always remember that." Bakugou tenderly kissed his son's temple. "How about chocolate cake for dessert tonight?" "Yeah," Keijo exclaimed joyfully. "Can I help make it this time?" "I don't see why not," Kirishima giggled. "Yay, love you guys." Kirishima and Bakugou squeezed Keijo in a warm hug before heading downstairs to make the chocolate cake. Keijo felt immense gratitude for having such loving and caring parents. He made a promise to himself that he would never keep such burdens to himself again. Papa, 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 papa. Keijo bounced up and down with excitement, his youthful energy radiating. Kirishima glanced down, his eyes meeting his 4-year-old son's beaming face. Kirishima was preparing for his hero shift, only needing to put on his mask before being ready. "What's the matter, little buddy?" Kirishima inquired, scooping up his cheerful son. Keijo smiled, revealing his sharp shark-like teeth, reminiscent of Kirishima's own. "Uncle Denki and Uncle Sho wanted me to ask you if I could spend the night at one of their houses for a sleepover." "A sleepover, huh?" Kirishima replied, his smile widening. "I don't see any reason why not. You're welcome to go, but you'll need to ask Daddy first. Although considering you got in trouble at preschool today, I'm not sure he'll agree. But who knows?" Keijo pouted, and Kirishima gently placed him back on the ground. The young boy crossed his arms and stared indignantly at the floor. Kirishima chuckled softly. "Not only that, but you and Daddy had an argument, and you haven't apologized yet." "Dad started it," Keijo interjected, his voice filled with defiance. "It's not my fault." "Keijo, you were the one who started it," Kirishima said, crossing his arms, his tone firm. "Don't raise your voice at me. You need to apologize or else you won't be going at all." Keijo groaned, lashing out by kicking one of the shoes strewn across the floor, and stormed off. Kirishima let out a weary sigh. Keijo had inherited his father's explosive temper, and he certainly could be a handful. However, both Bakugou and Kirishima acknowledged their role in spoiling him, which had contributed to his challenging behavior. Keijo returned to his room, his angry expression still etched on his face. He didn't want to apologize. He believed it wasn't his fault that a classmate had been mocking his quirk. Keijo felt he was standing up for himself. When they had arrived home, Keijo had continued to argue with Bakugou about the incident, which had escalated into a back and forth of raised voices. Did he feel even the slightest remorse for his behavior? Perhaps a little. Apologizing was daunting for him, It felt embarrassing and uncomfortable, and Keijo's stubbornness prevented him from apologizing unless he genuinely felt the urge to do so. He glanced around his room, searching for something to occupy his restless mind, but found nothing that caught his interest. He desperately wanted to attend the sleepover, especially to see his buddies Tazumi and Sammy. He missed them dearly. Yet he would have to apologize. Keijo wasn't skilled with words, so he decided to express his remorse through actions. Determination welled up within him, and he leaped off his bed, leaving his room with resolve. He descended the stairs slowly, carefully checking both directions to ensure his parents were nowhere in sight. Spotting his father watching TV in the living room, Keijo felt a pang of apprehension. Why was this so difficult? He shuffled down the remaining stairs, standing beside his father's location. He just needed to find a suitable way to express himself non-verbally. A hug. But he couldn't bring himself to touch his dad. He was still upset with him. No, he wouldn't apologize like this. Keijo turned on his heel, slipping away unnoticed. "Babe, are you ready?" Keijo heard his papa's voice echoing through the house. The dark-haired boy observed his dad appearing from the stairs. Bakugou stood up and fastened his gauntlets to his wrists. "Yeah, I'm freaking ready," he replied, striding toward Kirishima. "Hey, Keijo, you're heading to Grandma Mitsuki's house." "Oh, right. Keijo wants to go to a sleepover at, Kaminari's house," Kirishima mentioned. Bakugou raised an eyebrow, his expression turning sour. "No, he's not going." "Why not?" Keijo shouted. "I want to go." "You're not going because you caused trouble at school, brat. There's no way you're going." "That's not fair." Keijo stomped his foot, and small sparks emitted from his hands. "I want to go." "I don't care what you want. You're not going, and don't you dare use your demon quirk on me." At that moment, Keijo unleashed a full-blown tantrum. He kicked and punched things, yelling and screaming. Kirishima tried to calm both of them down but failed, resorting to the one thing he knew would catch their attention. "Keijo, shut your mouth. Your behavior won't get you what you want. If your dad says you're not going, then you're not going." Keijo froze, his eyes welling up with tears. His papa was angry with him, too. Great, just great. Keijo lowered his gaze in shame, expecting more scolding, but none came. "Get in the car, Keijo. Now," Kirishima commanded, pointing towards the garage. The 5-year-old boy walked to the garage, entered the unlocked car, and settled into his car seat, securing the seatbelt. It wasn't fair. He hated his parents. Why couldn't he have cool parents like Tazumi? Unbeknownst to Keijo, tears streamed down his cheeks, and he sniffled. Right now, he wished nothing more than to hide. All he wanted was to disappear. Bakugou and Kirishima climbed into the car, and they dropped Keijo off at Bakugou's parents' house. Not a word was spoken during the ride. Keijo stepped out of the car, feeling dejected and upset. When Mitsuki asked him what was wrong, he remained silent. Bakugou explained the situation, and she frowned with sadness. "Keijo, that wasn't a nice thing to do," Mitsuki admonished him. "You should apologize." "I'm not going to apologize. I hate them," Keijo yelled before sprinting up the stairs, seeking refuge in the bedroom where he would spend the night. He clutched a teddy bear and a blanket, retreating to his hiding spot, which happened to be the closet. He berated himself internally, convinced that he was a troublesome brat, annoying everyone around him. He believed that everyone wished he would disappear. It was all his fault. It would always be his fault. The following morning, Keijo descended the stairs of his grandparents' house, hood pulled over his head. In a few minutes, his parents would be arriving to pick him up, but for now, Mitsuki and Masaru had called him down to grab a snack, which he declined. Since his arrival, he had remained quiet, barely leaving his bedroom. However, he couldn't help but overhear familiar voices emanating from the kitchen, prompting him to peek around the corner. To his surprise, his parents were already there, engaged in conversation. A peculiar sensation washed over him, an overwhelming feeling of invisibility and insignificance. Deciding to abandon his covert observation, Keijo resolved to go outside and wait for his parents, rather than lingering by the corner. The thought of seeing them so soon after his outburst in front of his grandma and dad churned his stomach with unease. Unfortunately, his secret escape plan was thwarted by his grandpa's voice. Keijo, where do you think you're going? Masaru inquired. Keijo turned his head and found both of his parents staring at him. He shuffled his feet and shrugged. I was just going outside, Keijo muttered. You shouldn't go outside by yourself, Masaru replied. But Tizumi does. That's because he doesn't wander off like you, and Midoriya is always keeping an eye on him from a distance, Kirishima sighed. That's not fa-. Keijo, I swear to All Might I'll scream if you say, that's not fair, Bakugou warned, fixing an intense glare on the young child. What the hell's been up with you lately? You're constantly talking back and throwing tantrums when things don't go your way. Keijo knew his parents were right. His behavior was unacceptable and he needed to apologize. He removed his hood and approached the adults. I'm sorry, Keijo mumbled, fidgeting with his fingers. A hand tousled his spiky black hair, catching him off guard. It's okay, buddy, but it's still not acceptable, Kirishima said. You'll be able to join the next sleepover, but for now, you're grounded. Okay, Keijo replied, feeling a slight sense of relief. At least he had another chance for the sleepover. It wasn't so bad after all, but being grounded was still disappointing. Yet why did he still feel guilty? He had apologized, yet the weight of his transgressions lingered. Keijo clenched his fist and looked up at his parents, determination etched on his face. Dad, Papa, I promise I'll do better next week. I won't cause any more trouble at school. I pinky promise. Keijo extended his pinky, waiting for his parents to reciprocate. Bakugou's cheeks flushed at his son's endearing gesture. Tease whatever, shrimp, he muttered, linking his pinky with Keijo's. Kirishima followed suit, and a pout formed on the brown-skinned boy's face. I'm not a shrimp. One day, I'll be super tall, he exclaimed, brimming with excitement. Bakugou chuckled and scooped up his son. Yeah, you will. Come on, let's go home. Okay. Keijo chirped happily. Bye, Grandma. Bye, Grandpa. He waved them goodbye before bounding out of the house. Hey, Keijo, wait for us. Kirishima called, chasing after his son. Bakugou sighed and shook his head. Mitsuki smirked and nudged him with her elbow. He's just like you when you were younger. You, Bakugou retorted before making his way out of the house, not bothering with a proper goodbye. They didn't deserve one. In a hasty farewell, he muttered a brief bye and shut the door. Okay, perhaps he was softening. It was all Keijo's and Kirishima's fault, 2 diamond rays of sunshine in one household. Not that he had any regrets. Bakugou observed Kirishima spinning Keijo in the air, the pair erupting into laughter together. Ugh, such insufferable cuteness. Despite himself, a smile crept onto his face. All right, Kirisunshins, let's wrap it up. We're going home. Bakugou clapped his hands and walked towards the joyful duo. Haven't heard that nickname in a while, Kirishima grinned. I suppose we've been brightening up your grumpy personality. Die. The first day of Keijo's grounding had arrived, and to make matters worse, it was a Saturday. Boredom consumed him as he aimlessly wandered around the house, desperately hoping for some form of entertainment. In a surprising turn of events, he even resorted to cleaning his room, a clear sign of his sheer boredom. Suddenly, the sound of his father's voice calling his name from the kitchen jolted him to attention. Finally, a glimmer of something to do. Keijo eagerly dashed towards the source of the sound, only to be met with his father holding a first aid kit. Disappointment etched across his face, he whined, I don't want to wrap them again, throwing his head back for dramatic effect. Bakugou chuckled softly, ruffling his son's hair. Doctor's orders. Come on. Despite his initial protest, Keijo didn't put up any further resistance. Bakugou gently placed him on the countertop and opened the kit. The young boy extended both of his arms, watching intently as his father unwrapped the bandages. A grimace formed on his face at the sight of the fresh scratch marks, prompting him to avert his gaze. Acting swiftly, Bakugou skillfully rewrapped his son's arms, knowing that Keijo would feel a bit melancholic if they weren't taken care of immediately. There we go, Bakugou clapped his hands and set Keijo back on the ground. Are you hungry? Nope. Keijo replied, swaying back and forth. "Dad, I'm bored." Bakugou hummed as he returned to washing the dishes. "Want to help me with the dishes?" he asked, observing his son's excitement as he bounced up and down. "Yeah." Keijo beamed. Bakugou lifted him up, retrieved the step stool, and placed him on it. "All right, I'll clean them, and you rinse them," Bakugou instructed Keijo, placing a glass cup in the sink for rinsing. "Just be careful not to drop it." Keijo exclaimed, taking great care as he rinsed the glass cup, just as his dad had advised. Bakugou took the cup from him and placed it in the rack. Keijo's gaze wandered to the miniature showerhead in the right corner of the sink, right next to the faucet. Seizing the opportunity while his dad's attention was elsewhere, he grabbed the showerhead and aimed it at his father, pressing the button on the side. Hot water shot out, drenching Bakugou's clothes. "Keijo!" Bakugou shouted, laughing. "Oh, you want to play that game, huh? How about this?" The blonde snatched the small sprayer from his son's hand and retaliated, thoroughly soaking Keijo in water. Keijo erupted in laughter, his words stumbling out, "Id. Yeah. You like being sprayed." Bakugou teased. Keijo scooped up bubbles from the sink, clapping his hands with glee, causing both him and Bakugou to be covered in foamy bubbles. Both of them laughed wholeheartedly, unaware of the approaching footsteps behind them. "Keijo, Katsuki!" exclaimed a certain redhead. "What the he?" Bakugou interrupted Kirishima by spraying him with water as well, his laughter persisting. Keijo chuckled and playfully threw bubbles at his papa. "You both want to play dirty, huh?" Kirishima remarked, giving them a playful glare. "Then let's play." Water and bubbles flew through the kitchen, soaking the floors, cabinets, and stove. Bakugou nearly slipped on the wet surface, earning a laugh from Kirishima. However, it was Bakugou who slipped and actually fell. Keijo found himself rolling on the floor in fits of laughter, though he ended up being the most soaked of the trio. "Time out, time out!" Kirishima yelled, raising his hands. "We're out of ammo." Keijo sat up, a hint of disappointment on his face. Are we done playing?" "Yup, little buddy, we are," Kirishima replied. "Come on, let's get you into some warm clothes and ready for nap time." Keijo whined but didn't argue. Kirishima carried him upstairs, changed him into clean, warm pajamas, and blow-dried his spiky black blonde hair before tucking him into bed. Keijo yawned, clearly exhausted from their playful activities. Kirishima brushed aside a stray strand of his son's hair and planted a gentle kiss on his forehead. "Tomorrow is Bring Your Kid to Work Day. Do you want to come along?" Kirishima asked. "Yeah," Keijo replied excitedly. "Do we get to see Uncle Zuku and Uncle Sho?" Kirishima nodded, and his son cheered with delight. The redhead lay Keijo back down, chuckling softly. Having a child wasn't what he had initially expected with Bakugou, but he had no regrets. The melodious chirping of birds outside Keijo's window roused the young boy from his slumber. He blinked his tired red eyes and let out a brief yawn. The presence of curtains aided Keijo in gradually awakening on serene mornings such as this one. The sunlight filtered through the tan curtains, casting a unique pattern on the carpeted floor. Eager to start his day, Keijo tossed the covers off his legs, allowing the cool air to caress his warm brown skin. Stepping out of his Mario-themed bed, he planted his feet on the plush carpet and made his way toward the bedroom door, each step accompanied by a faint creak. Twisting the gleaming doorknob, he opened the door, cringing at the screechy noise it emitted. Peering out into the hallway, he glanced in both directions, ensuring there was no one else awake yet. Detecting no enticing aroma wafting through the air, Keijo deduced that his parents were still asleep. Stealthily, he descended the stairs, the cool wooden floors eliciting a slight shiver. As anticipated, his parents were still in slumber. The young boy entered the kitchen, where the temperature was cooler compared to the rest of the house. The room was devoid of activity, with no dishes in the sink and the light switched off. Keijo found solace in the tranquility that enveloped him. His attention was captivated by the stillness. Glancing at the stove, he read the luminous green digits displaying the time, 7:59 a.m. It was an early hour for him, considering he would typically still be asleep at this time. Nevertheless, he brushed off the discrepancy and proceeded to the refrigerator, his desire for orange juice lingering. However, as he opened the fridge, the blast of cold air mingling with the kitchen's already chilly atmosphere proved too much for the young boy to endure. He promptly closed the refrigerator door, shuddering involuntarily, his arms wrapped around himself in an attempt to generate warmth. Displeased with the coldness that exceeded his preference, he frowned, his bottom lip slightly protruding. The yearning for orange juice remained unfulfilled. "What a cruel world we live in," he muttered, glancing back at the clock, which now read 8:01 a.m. Time certainly seemed to fly when one was idle. From upstairs, Keijo discerned the creaking of the floor, signaling the awakening of one of his parents. Gradually, the footsteps grew heavier, resonating through the house. Keijo pondered which parent it would be, knowing his papa was not one to rise early on Sunday mornings. It was undoubtedly his dad. Bakugou, a tall, pale-skinned man standing at 5 feet 9 inches with spiky blonde hair, turned the corner and jolted in surprise at the sight of his son in the kitchen. His hand instinctively clutched his racing heart as he exhaled sharply, recovering from the momentary shock. Keijo snickered, relishing in the accomplishment of startling his dear father. "Keijo," the spiky-haired blonde exclaimed, his grip still firm on his shirt. "What the heck are you doing up so early? You nearly gave me a heart attack." "Hold on," Bakugou bent over, placing his hands on his knees as he endeavored to steady his pounding heart. Meanwhile, Keijo swayed innocently from side to side. "Sorry, Dad," he apologized insincerely, reveling in the fact that he had managed to startle his father for the first time. It was a momentous achievement for him. Finally regaining control of his heartbeat, Bakugou switched on the kitchen light. Despite his initial intention to be angry at his son, he found it difficult, for the mischievous smirk on Keijo's face reminded him of Kirishima, his partner. "Why are you awake?" Bakugou inquired. "I woke up," Keijo replied nonchalantly. "What's for breakfast, Dad?" The blonde shrugged and reached for a pot and a pan. "What are you in the mood for? I know you love meat as much as your old man. How about chocolate pancakes today?" "With eggs?" Keijo interjected eagerly. Bakugou chuckled and shook his head. "All right, bacon, eggs, and chocolate pancakes it is. Anything else, little dynamite?" Keijo shook his head in response, unable to think of any additional requests. He sensed that there was a reason for his early awakening, a certain importance attached to this day, but he couldn't quite recall it. Bakugou gathered the necessary ingredients, noticing his son's contemplative expression. "Something on your mind?" Bakugou raised an eyebrow. "Is something special happening today?" Keijo looked up at his dad, his curiosity piqued. Bakugou appeared momentarily dumbfounded but quickly regained his composure. "Not that I'm aware of," Bakugou replied with a casual shrug. "Other than you accompanying Papa and me to work, I don't think there's anything else planned for today." That was the reason behind Keijo's sense of importance and his early awakening. He was thrilled about joining his parents at work. Bakugou emitted a small snort and began preparing the pancake mix. "Can you wake up your Papa?" Keijo nodded eagerly and set off to rouse his other sleepy father. Hurrying up the stairs and towards his parents' room, Keijo found the door ajar, eliminating the need to worry about the noise it might create. He entered the room and leaped onto the bed, sliding down a bit during the initial attempts. With determination, he finally managed to position himself on the bed and crawled toward his Papa, who was emitting an occasional drool. Placing his small hands on his Papa's chest, Keijo shook him firmly. "Papa, wake up." Keijo spoke loudly, prompting a groan of protest from his Papa. Undeterred, Keijo shook him again. "Papa!" The red-haired man jolted awake, his eyes darting frantically around the sunlit bedroom. Keijo was taken aback by his Papa's swift reaction, but as soon as their eyes met, the man calmed down and smiled faintly. "Good morning, little buddy. What's up?" Kirishima yawned and wiped away the drool trickling down his chin with the back of his hand. "Dad asked me to wake you up. We're having chocolate pancakes." "Chocolate pancakes, huh?" Kirishima responded with amusement in his voice. "I was actually in the mood for blueberry." Keijo stuck out his tongue and made a vividly disgusted face. Blueberry pancakes were not his favorite, they ranked lower than raspberry. Chocolate pancakes would always hold a special place in his heart. Kirishima swung his legs off the bed, his red hair cascading onto his shoulders. He stretched and rubbed his eyes. Keijo hopped off the bed and exited the room, giving his papa some privacy before heading downstairs. The delectable scent of chocolate permeated the air, intermingling with the savory aroma of sizzling bacon. It was a mouth-watering bouquet that warmed his heart. As Keijo descended the stairs, his stomach rumbled at the mere thought of the appetizing feast that awaited him. He proceeded toward the kitchen, the tantalizing aroma growing stronger. Upon turning the corner, his eyes were instantly drawn to a plate piled high with chocolate pancakes. "Dad, can I have one? Please, please, please." Keijo hopped up and down, his voice filled with eagerness. Bakugou cast a stern gaze in his direction. "Nope," he responded firmly before returning to his egg preparation. Keijo's mouth fell open, and he folded his arms across his chest, displaying his prominent pout. "Why not?" "Because I said so." Keijo whined and flailed his arms, loosening the bandages wrapped around them. "Pretty please." The young boy emphasized the word please, elongating the final vowel sound. Bakugou let out an exasperated sigh. "No, Keijo. Besides, breakfast is almost ready. Just wait a little longer. Waiting is for pussies." Bakugou's eyes widened at Keijo's statement. Slowly turning around, he stared at his son in shock. Who had taught him that word? The blonde exhaled, realizing that he had uttered the word in Keijo's presence some time ago. Kirishima would undoubtedly give him a piece of his mind if he ever found out that Keijo was aware of such language. "Keijo, little dynamite, I'll give you a piece of bacon right now if you promise not to mention how you know that word," Bakugou proposed, attempting to strike a deal. It was for his own sake. He didn't want to face Kirishima's wrath. Keijo placed a finger on his chin, contemplating the offer. "Make it 2 and we've got a deal." "Deal," Bakugou agreed, handing his son 2 pieces of bacon from the red glass plate. Keijo flashed a cheeky grin and gleefully devoured the bacon he had earned. "Good morning," a husky voice chimed in. Keijo looked up to see his papa, now more awake. "Good morning, Papa," Keijo greeted, taking another bite of his bacon. Kirishima gaped at Keijo and pouted. "How come you let Keijo have 2 pieces of bacon before breakfast is ready, Katsu?" "Because I promised Daddy I wouldn't tell you how I know the word pussies." Bakugou whipped his head around, his eyes fixated on his son, a betrayed expression on his face. "We had a deal." "Oops," Keijo giggled, finishing his bacon and darting out of the kitchen. He heard his dad shout his name, but he paid no attention. As rapid footsteps followed him, Keijo entered the living room and circled the coffee table, laughing at his dad's infuriated expression. Keijo and Bakugou circled the coffee table. Each time Bakugou veered right, Keijo would dart left, and vice versa. This comical chase continued until Bakugou finally caught Keijo. "You better cough up those 2 pieces of bacon, because you broke our deal," Bakugou stated, a smirk playing on his lips. Keijo stuck his tongue out and blew a raspberry. Bakugou pretended to be offended and gently placed Keijo back on the carpet. Kirishima chuckled at the playful exchange between father and son, crossing his arms. "I'll let this one slide, Katsu, but tonight is a different story." Keijo stared at his papa confusingly. He turned his head to his dad and saw his cheeks pink. "What's happening tonight?" Keijo asked, tilting his head. "Are you and Daddy gonna wrestle again like last week?" "Yup," the redhead smiled. "Can I join?" Keijo asked with a playful glint in his red eyes. Kirishima and Bakugou exchanged looks before the blonde decided to answer. "Next time, buddy," he said, ruffling his son's spiky black hair. The small boy pouted. "Okay. Anyways, breakfast is ready." After enjoying a hearty breakfast, Kirishima, Bakugou, and Keijo prepared themselves for the day ahead. Kirishima and Bakugou donned their hero outfits, while Keijo opted for his favorite Ground Riot hoodie, a merchandise item from the same company that produces Dynamite and Red Riot merchandise. He paired it with dark blue jeans and black Nikes. The trio then hopped into their car and made their way to their company, filling Keijo with a sense of excitement. As they drove, Bakugou reassured Keijo, who was practically bursting with anticipation, to calm down. Kirishima chuckled and added, "We're almost there, Keijo." Although Keijo tried his best to heed their advice, his excitement proved hard to contain. He eagerly anticipated patrolling with his parents and his uncles, Midoriya and Todoroki, and seeing them in action for the first time. It was an exhilarating prospect. After a few minutes, Keijo's gaze was caught by a tall building with numerous windows passing by outside the car window. He gazed at it in awe, realizing that it must be the agency where his parents worked. His excitement reached an almost concerning level. Bakugou parked the car in the agency's parking lot and retrieved his gauntlets from Kirishima. Keijo swiftly unbuckled his seatbelt and, with a touch of clumsiness, hopped out of his car seat and opened the car door. As he jumped down from the car, Bakugou couldn't help but snort and close the door Keijo had exited from. He cautioned, "Calm down, little dynamite, or else your quirk might start acting up. We don't want to end up at the hospital, do we?" Keijo immediately shook his head, noticing his papa putting on his cool mask. He admired the mask and observed as Bakugou locked the car and pocketed the keys. Kirishima scooped up Keijo in his arms, and together, they made their way into the towering building. The entrance was abuzz with pro-heroes, some accompanied by children and others alone. Keijo smiled, appreciating the formal atmosphere of the place. "Whoa," he exclaimed, taking in the grandeur of the entryway. It was truly an impressive sight. "I know, right?" Kirishima replied, smiling at his son. "I had the same reaction when I first saw this place. Your dad was impressed too, but he'll never admit it because he's a bit of a tsundere and takes pride in everything." Kirishima playfully rolled his eyes, earning a glare from Bakugou. Keijo giggled, his eyes scanning the area as he searched for his uncles and his not-blood brother. "Where's Uncle Zuku and Uncle Sho?" he asked. Bakugou shrugged and hummed, "Maybe they're in the back. I don't freaking know." "Oh, they're over there," Kirishima exclaimed, pointing toward the seating area in the building. Midoriya and Todoroki were engaged in conversation, while Tazumi played with his toy cars. The three of them approached the trio. "Hey, guys," Kirishima greeted. Midoriya and Todoroki looked up, and Midoriya's face brightened. "Hi, Kirishima, Kaken," he greeted cheerfully. "Hello," Todoroki added. Tazumi glanced up from his car and flashed a wide smile. "Uncle Eiji, Uncle Cat," he exclaimed before directing his two different eye colors toward the brown-skinned boy in Kirishima's arms. "Keijo." Kirishima gently placed Keijo on the ground, and the boy rushed toward Tazumi, embracing him in a hug. "Hi, Tazumi." "Well, now that everyone is here, we can start with today's work," Midoriya announced, standing up. "Since we brought our kids, we've been assigned a safe patrolling duty for today, a mall, to be precise." Kirishima responded with a hum. "Okay, let's get going." He turned his attention to the two excited boys happily chatting away. "Tazumi, Keijo, today we'll be patrolling the mall." The two boys beamed and nodded in understanding. They were beyond thrilled. The four adults chuckled at their reactions, and together, they headed toward the mall. It was a bustling place, but not much was happening at the moment. Keijo and Tazumi discussed their quirks and stuck close to their parents' sides. "And then my dad got mad at me," Keijo laughed, and Tazumi joined in. "Poor Uncle Cat. At least he didn't get into much trouble," the freckled, bicolored boy remarked. Keijo nodded and looked around, taking note of the numerous people milling about. It was crowded. "Keijo, Tazumi, if you both don't keep up, we might have to carry you," Todoroki calmly warned, pausing and waiting for the boys to catch up. Keijo and Tazumi rushed to join him, promptly apologizing. Todoroki decided to walk behind them to ensure they wouldn't get distracted again. Tazumi's gaze landed on the fountain situated at the center of the mall, and he stared at the water pouring out in awe. "Keijo, look." Tazumi tapped his not-blood brother's shoulder, his face beaming. "It's a fountain." Keijo observed it and oohed in delight. "Uncle Sho, can Tazumi and I go see the fountain?" Todoroki hummed and turned his gaze toward the fountain. "Since we don't have much else to do at the moment, I suppose we can." Bakugou, Kirishima, and Izuku, the boys want to check out the fountain. "Sure thing," Kirishima replied. We're just walking around anyway, so why not? Keijo and Tazumi raced toward the fountain, both placing their hands on the outer edge. I got here first, Tazumi proudly declared, and Keijo crossed his arms. No, I did. Aha. Midoriya sighed and gently patted both of their heads. You both win. They both smiled at the tall hero and peered into the water. The fountain was populated with orange and white fish and numerous coins. As the boys marveled at the aquatic display, a scream suddenly echoed from a nearby shop. Midoriya and Bakugou swiftly turned their heads toward the noise, only to witness a crowd of people running in their direction. Midoriya quickly reacted, picking up the two boys and holding them close. Kirishima and Todoroki rushed toward the source of the commotion to investigate. Midoriya nearly got trampled by the crowd, and his grip on the kids loosened. Bakugou hurried to Midoriya's side, taking Keijo from him and holding the boy tightly. Eventually, the chaos subsided, and Kirishima and Todoroki returned. Well, it turned out to be just a fire, Kirishima chuckled sheepishly. Todoroki took care of it. How about we grab something to eat? Yeah. Tazumi and Keijo exclaimed excitedly. The vibrant echoes of children's laughter and gleeful screams reverberated through the atmosphere, creating a delightful symphony of joy. The rapid patter of tiny footsteps resonated as the youngsters playfully pursued one another. Some children reveled in the various activities of the playground, while others eagerly awaited their turn on the swings. A few frolicked in the grass, relishing in carefree moments, while a handful observed from a distance, perhaps due to shyness. A select few refrained from participating, facing the consequences of their poor choices. Recess, a cherished PRD of respite, granted permission for exuberant shouts, lively races, and innocent touches of freedom that failed to resonate with a particular young soul named Tazumi. Tazumi, an introspective child, exhibited a preference for the company of only a few individuals upon initial acquaintance. His closest companions consisted of Keijo, Sammy, Kiki, and Naomi. Meanwhile, his cherished friends engaged in an enthralling game of tag with other children. However, Tazumi harbored an innate aversion toward physical contact, which he steadfastly maintained. It should be noted that Tazumi possessed an affectionate nature, but he reserved touch for those with whom he shared a profound bond. This inclination aligned with the broader spectrum of child behavior. Seated alone on a bench, Tazumi silently observed his friends frolicking and reveling in their playtime. Alas, his physical limitations prevented him from fully participating. While he could engage in brief bursts of activity, his asthma swiftly impeded any prolonged exertion, leading to distressing coughing fits he was keen to avoid. The recent race with Keijo had served as a stark reminder of the subsequent discomfort he experienced. The sensation of suffocation and the inability to catch his breath filled him with apprehension. Amidst his contemplative thoughts, a flicker of movement caught his peripheral vision, drawing his attention to Kiki Ashido. Kiki, with her vibrant pink hair and infectious smile, was a figure with whom Tazumi felt at ease. Unlike most children, Kiki possessed a welcoming demeanor that effortlessly attracted others to her side. Hey Tizzy! Kiki exclaimed, settling down beside him. Why don't you come join us in our play? I don't want to, Tazumi responded, his gaze fixed on the children engrossed in their spirited activities. I don't like touching. Understanding his apprehension, Kiki nodded, her ever-present smile unwavering. Much like Uncle Eiji, she possessed a congenial disposition. Well, Keijo and I are planning to sneak back into the school to play a harmless prank on Miss Hamlet. Would you care to join us? Tazumi hesitated, biting his lip as he contemplated the potential consequences. Won't we get into trouble? Only if we get caught. Kiki retorted, a mischievous grin adorning her face. Excitement danced in her yellow irises. Tazumi sighed, reluctantly succumbing to Kiki's infectious enthusiasm. She gently took his hand, leading him towards a nearby tree where Keijo eagerly awaited their arrival. Keijo, Tizzy's on board. Kiki exclaimed with delight. Keijo raised an eyebrow and smirked. Well, Tiz, you're in? Tazumi nodded, his nervous smile betraying his underlying trepidation. Kiki enveloped them in a group huddle, And together they embarked on their mischievous adventure. Alright, a teacher will be coming out shortly. We just need to wait, Kiki explained. Keijo and Tazumi nodded in agreement as the trio ascended the hill and positioned themselves by the door. True to Kiki's words, a teacher emerged with her class. As the teacher guided her students out, Keijo, Tazumi, and Kiki slipped through unnoticed, displaying their stealthy skills. Kiki felt a surge of excitement as their plan unfolded successfully. So, what's next? Tazumi inquired. We're heading to Miss Hamlet's room, Keijo replied. She always leaves her door unlocked. With that, the trio embarked on their next move. As Keijo had predicted, the door was indeed unlocked. Kiki wasted no time and began drawing on the desks with a dry erase marker, while Keijo created chaos among the toys, and Tazumi scattered the papers around. It was an exhilarating experience. Alright, I think we've done enough, Kiki signaled, giving them a thumbs up. Keijo and Tazumi nodded in agreement. Let's go before we get caught, Tazumi suggested. The three hurriedly exited the classroom, ensuring to close the door behind them, and returned outside. Laughter filled the air as they reveled in their mischievous act. That was so much fun. Tazumi exclaimed. Yeah. Keijo chimed in. And when the teacher asks who did it, we'll just say we don't know. Kiki laughed. However, their triumph was short-lived when a fellow student from their class approached them 6 minutes later. Ms. Hamlet and Ms. Walker want to see you guys, they informed. The three didn't give it much thought, assuming it might be related to their absence or something similar. They approached Ms. Hamlet and tried to act nonchalantly as if they hadn't committed a severe transgression. They didn't want to raise suspicion. Yes, Ms. Hamlet? Kiki asked innocently. You three will be having your parents called today, Ms. Hamlet replied sternly. Kiki, Keijo, and Tazumi's eyes widened in shock. What for? Tazumi exclaimed. A hall monitor came over here 6 minutes ago and informed me that you guys caused havoc in the classroom. Not only that, but you also drew on the desks. We will be going inside so that I can contact each of your parents. Tattletale. Kiki stuck her tongue out at the teacher. I'll be calling yours first, let's go. Miss Hamlet's tone remained stern, and the guilty children followed her. When she saw the mess they had made, her fury intensified. She dialed Kiki's parents first. Hello, is this Mrs. Ashido? Ms. Hamlet spoke. It is? Well, your daughter Kiki Ashido drew all over the desks in the classroom during recess, and I would like both you and your wife, if possible, to come here and see what she has done. Kiki trembled with fear. She knew she was in for serious trouble, but she didn't regret a thing. Keijo was next. Mr. Kirishima, I must inform you that your child has misbehaved once again. From what I have seen, he tampered with the toys and likely drew on the desks with Ashido. Please come as soon as you can, whether it's immediately or after school. I would like you and your husband to witness the mess your child has caused. Keijo wasn't on the verge of tears. If anything, he wanted to express his frustration. Lastly, it was Tazumi's turn. Hello, Mr. Todoroki. I regret to inform you that your son has engaged in highly disruptive behavior with 2 other students. He vandalized the classroom alongside them, meddling with the toys, drawing on the desks, and scattering the assignments we were supposed to work on. I request that you and your husband visit the classroom to witness the extent of the mess they have made. Now, Tazumi was infuriated. He hadn't touched the toys or drawn on the desks, but he had still acted wrongly. The room was so disorganized that the students in the class had to relocate to another room. Tazumi, Kiki, and Keijo sat in chairs at the front of the room, waiting for their parents to arrive. They should have been remorseful for their actions, but at that moment, they weren't. They believed their teacher deserved it for snitching on them the last time. They held no regrets, at least not yet. Tizzy, don't you have an apple in your bag? Kiki asked, swinging her legs. Tazumi nodded. It's a green one. Do you want it? Sure. No talking, Miss Hamlet reprimanded, glaring at the children. And no snacks. Kiki crossed her arms and pouted, while Tazumi frowned. Keijo silently recited curse words in his mind, not wanting to get into further trouble. Have you watched Tinker Bell yet? Tazumi asked, addressing both of them. Nope, Kiki replied. I was going to, but I didn't get the chance, Keijo began, but he was abruptly interrupted. No talking. Miss Hamlet interjected, silencing Keijo. Keijo rolled his eyes and muttered, "Calm down." The teacher's eyes widened in surprise. Kiki and Tazumi burst into laughter. Keijo. Kiki laughed. Oh my god, I want to say it too. Calm down, Miss Hamlet. Yeah, calm down, Tazumi snorted. Little did they know, their parents were standing at the door, overhearing their conversation. They had heard everything and, needless to say, they were not pleased. Keijo glanced at Tazumi and locked eyes with his father. The intensity in his father's gaze silenced him immediately. Kiki's mother stared at her furiously, causing her to fall silent as well. Tazumi was the last to make eye contact with his parents, and their furious expressions conveyed their anger. Yes, they were in deep trouble. The three lowered their gaze to the floor, maintaining silence as their teacher addressed them. Keijo bit his lip and sighed in frustration. I'm in trouble now. Kiki and Tazumi snorted, unable to contain their laughter. The girl with brown skin and pink hair quickly remembered the gravity of the situation and nudged Tazumi to stop laughing, which he did. So, this is what we get, huh? Mina exclaimed, her tone escalating. We take care of you, and you can't even behave properly at school. Kiki and Tazumi flinched at her loud tone, while Keijo remained unfazed. He was accustomed to yelling and loud voices, given his home environment. Don't you guys have any shame? Midoriya scolded. Tazumi, I expected better from you. The same goes for you, Keijo, Bakugou added, glaring at his son. Don't you remember what you promised last Friday? That you wouldn't cause any more trouble? The hurt in his father's voice shattered Keijo. He had completely forgotten about that promise. I'm sorry, the three said in unison, looking guilty. What kind of punishment do they deserve? Kirishima inquired, turning to the teacher. No recess for a month, if that is acceptable to you, Ms. Hamlet proposed. What? Keijo exclaimed. That's not fair. Why, you can get a wet wipe and clean the desks. Swipe. Tazumi stifled his laughter and cleared his throat. Not the swipe, he whispered. Kiki giggled. It was hard for her to take the situation seriously when Keijo was present. Keijo was her best friend, no matter the circumstances. Keijo wasn't taking it seriously either. Keijo, a tone rang out, sending shivers down his spine. It was his father's voice. Now he was certain of the severity of the situation. They were scolded severely and ended up in tears. They were even instructed to clean up the mess they had made. No misdeed goes unpunished. Keijo received a scolding at home, and so did Kiki and Tazumi. But in the end, they certainly didn't regret their actions. Keijo sat in the living room, engrossed in coloring the pages of his Deku coloring book. The tranquility of the moment was accentuated by the rare occurrence of both his parents being on a 2-week break. They reclined comfortably, enjoying a leisurely television session. Keijo cherished these precious moments spent with his parents above all else. However, his grip faltered, causing the green crayon to slip from his fingers, prompting a pout to form on his lips. His palms were clammy, which only added to his frustration. Relinquishing his coloring efforts, Keijo inadvertently triggered a minor outburst of distress, causing him to whine and retreat from the table. Observing the commotion from the corner of his eye, Bakugou redirected his attention to his distressed child and inquired, Little Dynamite, what's troubling you? My hands are sparking. Keijo exclaimed anxiously, tears welling in his eyes. Seeking solace, he hurried over to his father. Bakugou lifted him onto his lap and reassured him, They aren't scary, just little sparks. See? Demonstrating, he extended his left hand and replicated the sparking effect. Direct your focus solely on your hands and attempt to calm yourself down. Gradually, those sparks will diminish. Keijo sniffled and complied with his father's guidance, fixating his attention on his hands and taking deep breaths. Gradually, the sparking subsided, eliciting a sense of relief. A wave of happiness washed over Keijo as Bakugou praised him and tenderly planted a kiss on his head. Beaming with joy, Keijo basked in the warmth of the moment, feeling like his dream had come true. He was truly content. Oh, by the way, my parents. They want to meet both of you, Kirishima interjected with a nervous chuckle. What? Bakugou murmured, casting a questioning glance at his husband. Why? I told them about Keijo, and they expressed their desire to meet him. However, they don't know my sexuality. I thought it would be ideal for them to meet you, my love, Kirishima explained, planting a tender kiss on Bakugou's temple and grinning. Bakugou, though he huffed and rolled his eyes, couldn't deny the sincerity in Kirishima's plea. When is this happening? Tomorrow. Road trip. Keijo cheered, his enthusiasm palpable. Bakugou patted his son's head with a resigned sigh. Since you don't have any siblings, won't the brat be bored? I don't want to bring him along if he'll just be bored. Tizumi is currently at Roundface's house with Dunceface's daughter, Bakugou grumbled. I could text Kaminari to see if Sammy can join us, Kirishima suggested. Keijo's spirits instantly lifted at the mention of Sammy Kaminari, one of his closest friends, albeit quite shy. Nevertheless, he was undeniably kind. Bakugou, feeling his objections were futile in the face of his son's happiness, let out a sigh. He knew he had little say in the matter. Fine, he reluctantly conceded, text Dunceface. Yes, sir. Kirishima swiftly retrieved his phone and composed a text message to his beloved friend. Kuriai. Kamiya bro. Kamidik. Ki, what's up? Kuriai. Katsuki, Keijo, and I are going on a road trip tomorrow to my parents, but I don't want him to be alone, so I was wondering if we could bring your son with us. Kamidik. Sure man. He's doing nothing but hiding in his room all day like the antisocial child he is. I bet he'd love to go with you guys and Keijo. Kuriai. Thanks, bro. We gotta hang out again. I miss you. Kamidik. Yeah. The Baku squad gotta hang again. By the way, when are you going? Kuriai. Tomorrow at 7, it takes 6 hours to get there. Kamidik. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not going up. Kuriai. You can bring him over now so they can have like a little sleepover. Kamidik. Yes, sir. I'll pack him a bag. What will he need? Kuriai. A week's worth of clothes, socks, and underwear. Kamidik. Got it. T-L brew. Kuriai. Read 11:50 a.m. Alright, so Kami is bringing Sammy over tonight for a sleepover before our road trip, Kirishima informed. Bakugou hummed, observing Keijo wriggle free from his grasp and bounce up and down with excitement. I can't wait to see Sammy, Keijo exclaimed, brimming with joy. It feels like forever since I last saw him. You saw him just 4 days ago, Bakugou deadpanned. To a kid, that's like an eternity. The couple shared a laugh at their son's exaggeration. Kirishima nibbled on his lower lip, fidgeting with his fingers. Katsuki, can we talk? He requested. Bakugou looked at him, puzzled, but nodded in agreement. He rose from the couch, allowing Kirishima to lead him to a different room. What's on your mind, shitty hair? Bakugou inquired, folding his arms and raising an eyebrow. And nothing. It's hard to believe sometimes that we're actually together, you know? Kirishima muttered, placing his hands on Bakugou's slender waist. It feels like a dream. Bakugou fed but couldn't help but smirk as he cupped Kirishima's face with his hands. You demon moron, it's not a dream, so don't f***ing worry about it, he retorted. I know, Kirishima sighed, leaning his forehead against his lover's. I truly love you. Love you too. Bakugou kissed Kirishima's lips and emitted a soft hum. You're mine and I'm yours. That's perfectly fine with me, Kirishima smirked, applying more pressure as he leaned into Bakugou. I want to explore every inch of you. The blonde chuckled breathlessly. Oh really? Yeah, go ahead and do it. With pleasure. Keijo tidied up his toys and eagerly awaited the arrival of his best friend. His parents seemed to be absent, but he heard peculiar sounds of slapping emanating from the study room. Curiosity piqued, he approached the door and paused, his hand hovering over the doorknob. Just as he was about to investigate further, the doorbell rang. Keijo's attention shifted to the front door, and he hurriedly made his way to answer it. Unlocking the door and swinging it open, he was greeted by his Uncle Denk and Uncle Hanta, accompanied by their child, Sammy. Hey, Uncle Denk, hi Uncle Hanta. Keijo exclaimed, his smile bright. Hey there, little guy. Where are your parents? Kaminari inquired, setting Sammy down along with his small bag. Keijo pointed towards the study room. I heard strange sounds, like slapping and groaning, coming from in there. Kaminari and Siro's faces reddened swiftly. They hurriedly entered the house and knocked on the door. Yo, Kiriblasti. Are you two getting it on? Kaminari shouted. Kaminari! Kirishima exclaimed. Keijo and Sammy looked on in confusion but decided to ignore it. The brown-skinned boy grasped his best friend's hand and closed the front door, locking it behind them. Come on, let's go to my room. Keijo beamed, pulling Saminar up the stairs. Sammy had pale skin, black frizzy hair with a yellow lightning streak, one eye yellow, and the other black. His quirk was electric lock, enabling him to discharge electricity from his hands and lock it onto any desired item or object. While the electricity was initially yellow, it transformed to black when locked. Similar to flex tape, Sammy's quirk possessed enhanced capabilities. Unfortunately, he couldn't harness his twin sister's burst electricity quirk, which involved absorbing and releasing large amounts of electricity from her body, showcasing tremendous power. Nevertheless, Sammy's own electrical abilities were equally potent, provided he dedicated himself fully. Before long, they reached Keijo's room and settled down to converse. What do you want to become when you grow up? Keijo inquired, placing Sammy's bag on the floor. I want to be a hero. Sammy exclaimed. Same here. Keijo replied, flashing his sharp teeth. I aspire to save and protect people. I want that too, Sammy murmured bashfully, rising to his feet. But maybe not when people are constantly staring at me. People will always be watching you when you're a hero. You'll be popular and amazing. Keijo reassured him. Well, maybe. Sammy's response was uncertain. Keijo giggled and gazed at himself in the mirror. Becoming a hero was his ultimate aspiration, a goal he wholeheartedly pursued. Early the next day, around 6 a.m., Keijo and Sammy were roused from their sleep and instructed to get ready. In their groggy state, they changed into fresh clothes, washed up, and climbed into the vehicle. Sammy rested his head on Keijo's shoulder and dozed off once again. Keijo teetered between drowsiness and alertness as he heard his parents loading their suitcases into the trunk. The prospect of embarking on a road trip to visit his other grandparents made him nervous yet excited. The thought of having 2 additional grandparents filled him with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Eventually, Keijo closed his eyes and drifted into a dreamless slumber. The hours passed slowly, and Keijo and Sammy were now wide awake, engaged in lively chatter and playing I Spy. However, the game lost its appeal, quickly turning tedious. They settled into a more relaxed state, simply enjoying the music. That was until Sammy sneezed and inadvertently electrocuted everyone in the vehicle. What the F was that? Bakugou exclaimed, jolting upright from his seat. Kirishima flinched but managed to harden his body just in time to minimize the impact of the electricity. Concern swelled within Bakugou as he turned to the back seat, finding Sammy rubbing his nose and Keijo sitting, startled but unharmed. Relief washed over him, knowing that his son was safe and sound. It's okay, Squirt. Are you guys hungry? Yeah. Keijo responded eagerly. I want to go to McDonald's. Sammy nodded in agreement, his eyes gleaming with excitement. All right, we'll find a McDonald's once we reach a suitable location, Bakugou smirked. Kirishima chuckled softly. Of course, Katsuki. And so, the journey continued. It felt like an eternity until they finally stumbled upon a McDonald's, where they encountered less than satisfactory customer service. Bakugou nearly engaged in a confrontation with one of the cashiers who had shown disrespect, calling him a weakling. Bakugou, being the fiery individual he was, didn't tolerate such bullshit. After acquiring their food, Kirishima prepared to drive away, but Bakugou unbuckled his seatbelt and exited the car, purposefully slamming the door to vent his frustration. Kirishima parked the car in the lot, unbuckled his seatbelt, and sighed. All right, I'll go get him back. If anyone approaches, make Sammy sneeze multiple times, and Keijo, blast them away. Kirishima instructed, leaving the two kids alone momentarily. He knew he was both a flawed uncle and parent. Before he could reach the entrance, Bakugou Katsuki emerged from the McDonald's carrying a blood-stained table. It was an accident. He's not dead, I think, Bakugou stated matter-of-factly, dragging the table toward the car. Kirishima stood stunned for a moment, then decided to survey the situation inside the restaurant. Bakugou had undoubtedly caused quite the commotion. Katsuki, what the hell? I said it was an accident. They could sue you. They should know better than to mess with someone who has a short temper. This table is my trophy. Get in the car. We have an hour left. Let's go, Bakugou grumbled, placing the table in the trunk. Kirishima sighed, making his way to the car and opening the door. That was just Katsuki Bakugou for you, a hothead, but he was Kirishima's hothead. 10 minutes into the drive, Kirishima had an epiphany. He chuckled awkwardly. Katsu, baby, I may have, been going the wrong way this entire time. What? Bakugou's tone revealed a hint of anger. I need to turn around now. Are you kidding me? Language, baby. Don't baby me, you son of a beach. I told you to use the jeepus. Bakugou shouted. Kirishima sighed, sinking into his seat. I know that I know. He made a quiet U-turn and cruised down the road, attempting to get back the hour they lost. They were only 6 minutes away from their destination, and Keijo and Sammy peacefully slept in the back seat. Bakugou took over driving as his husband grew tired, but not too tired to slide his pee-pee while behind the wheel. Bakugou found it difficult to concentrate on the road with the pleasure he was receiving. Despite the distractions, he couldn't complain. His eyes crossed as Kirishima pressed his thumb against the tip, causing Bakugou's body to tremble as he held back Ens. "DG, cut it out," Bakugou said through gritted teeth, trying to maintain control. Kirishima merely hummed innocently, acting as though he wasn't doing anything. Bakugou couldn't shoot him a glare since he needed to stay focused on driving. Through Bakugou discreetly murmured, feeling overwhelmed by the sensations. Kirishima chuckled seductively. You like that, Katsuki? Do you love it when I twist my wrist like this? He growled, his voice dripping with Stockton. Why, I love it, Bakugou shamefully admitted. Kirishima smiled, determined to bring his lover to climax. Uncle Ei? Kirishima froze his actions and turned his head to the tired Sammy. Hey little buddy, what's up? Kirishima asked, trying to appear nonchalant. Sammy rubbed his eyes and yawned. I woke up. Are we there yet? Almost, the redhead answered, quickly composing himself. Sammy smiled. Oh, Uncle Ei, why is your hand right there? Bakugou swiftly shoved Kirishima's hand away. I was pointing at a stain on his pants. Kirishima swiftly responded, coming up with a quick excuse. Oh, okay. Sammy looked out the window and observed the passing cars. Kirishima buckled up Bakugou's pants and smiled apologetically. The blonde shot him a side glare and huffed in annoyance. Shortly after that embarrassing scene, they arrived at Kirishima's parents' house, and nerves began to settle in. Bakugou knew he shouldn't be nervous, but he couldn't help it. Kirishima noticed Bakugou's sudden hesitation when parking the car. Babe, it'll be fine, Kirishima reassured with a smile. Yeah, right. You haven't even come out to them, Bakugou retorted, his anxiety getting the better of him. Touché. Sammy woke Keijo up, and as the little boy looked out the window, he saw an unfamiliar house. It was a 2-story house made of bricks and wood, with flowers adorning the front porch, creating a welcoming atmosphere. Keijo bounced with excitement. Can we go in? The enthusiastic little boy asked. Kirishima laughed and nodded his head. He got out of the car to let the boys out, and Sammy seemed a bit on edge upon seeing the unfamiliar house. Keijo took his hand and led him to the front door, followed closely by Kirishima and Bakugou. Kirishima rang the doorbell and waited patiently. A few seconds later, the door opened, revealing a woman with short brown hair, sharp teeth, and yellow eyes. A smile lit up her face. Ijiro, the brunette exclaimed, hugging Kirishima. Welcome home, honey. Hey, Mom, Kirishima greeted, patting her back and returning the hug. She shifted her yellow eyes to the blonde standing next to him. "Oh, you must be Bakugou. Kirishima talked a lot about you when you guys were in UA together." "Mom." She giggled and straightened herself up. "I'm Riki Kirishima," she smiled, revealing her sharp teeth. Bakugou nodded, realizing where Kirishima inherited his unique teeth. "Come inside," Riki said, stepping back to let them in. They entered and were greeted by the warm scent of cooking food. Riki hadn't noticed the presence of the little ones, but upon closer inspection, she soon did. "Oh my gosh, Drew, are those your kids?" "Nope, the one with the brown skin is mine. The other one is a friend's kid," Kirishima explained. Riki nodded and handed the kids lollipops, which they happily accepted. Keijo was delighted to have another grandma. "So, where's your wife?" Riki asked, smiling. Kirishima gulped. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you and Dad about." "Oh, your father is already in the living room. Drew, lead the way for your friend and the kids." A sigh escaped Kirishima's lips as he led Bakugou and the kids into the living room. Another person was already there, someone unfamiliar to both Kirishima and Bakugou. It was a little boy with large black wings and brown skin. His eyes were a mysterious light blue, and his hair was pastel blue. "Hey, Dad," Kirishima greeted, hugging his father, Aya Kirishima, who couldn't stand due to his lost leg from his time in the army. Aya had black hair, regular teeth, red eyes, and a scar over his right eye. His quirk was hardened fist, allowing him to harden his fists. He was fortunate not to have lost his eyes, ears, or right hand, which was essential for pleasuring himself. Aya's wife, Riki, possessed the quirk of strength, making her notably strong, though sometimes troublesome when angry. Aya had experienced hardships in his life. Aya hugged his son back. "Drew, long time no see. Who are these little squirts?" "That's my son Keijo, and the other is a friend's son. The brown-skinned one is Keijo, by the way," Kirishima introduced, proud of his children. Aya nodded, immediately taking a liking to his grandson. Keijo was undeniably adorable and innocent-looking, while Sammy exuded shyness. "Aren't you going to hug your grandpa?" Aya teased with a playful smile. Keijo ran into the older man's arms and embraced him. The boy noticed Aya's robotic leg and frowned. "What happened to your leg?" Keijo asked, curious. "That's a story I'll tell you when you're older," Aya chuckled, patting the boy's head. Bakugou pointed to the unfamiliar boy on the floor, engrossed in coloring. "Whose kid is that?" he asked, indicating the boy with raven-like features. Aya smirked. "Oh, you brought Bakugou. The one you dash. Can we not reminisce about the past? Please." Kirishima whined, feeling embarrassed by the topic. Aya laughed heartily. "This here is a kid we're babysitting until his parents come back. His name is Hiraki Nikyu, and his quirk is Raven. He can manipulate wind currents with his wings." "So manly!" Kirishima exclaimed, wiping away an admirable tear. Nikyu seemed confused by the praise and resumed his coloring. Kirishima joined them in the living room and took a seat on one of the couches. "So, what did you want to talk to us about?" Riki inquired. Kirishima cleared his throat, feeling a knot of nervousness. Can you guys go upstairs?" he asked, addressing the kids. Keijo, Sammy, and Nikyu obediently went upstairs to a different room. "I don't have a wife. I have a husband." Riki and Aya blinked, exchanging shocked glances. Kirishima continued, "My husband's name is Katsuki Bakugou. Keijo is our child. I'm sorry, but I'm gay." Bakugou held Kirishima's hand, feeling proud of his husband's courage. Aya and Riki were initially stunned, not expecting this to be the topic of conversation. An uncomfortable silence fell upon the room, and nobody made a move. Aya looked at his wife, smirking smugly. "Told you." "Shut up." What?" Kirishima stammered, fearing their reaction. "Son, I knew you were gay as soon as you couldn't stop talking about Bakugou," Aya confessed. "Your cheeks would turn red just saying his name. Your mother thought you might be bisexual, but now that you've come out, I finally win. Why you guys don't hate me?" "Of course not. We love you to pieces regardless of your sexuality. Thanks, Mom, Kirishima said, relieved and grateful. Years later, we're finally going to UA. Kiki exclaimed, her face beaming with excitement. Hey, calm down, you're going to create acid and burn all of us, Keijo jokingly warned, causing Nikyu to chuckle. Shikura, Sammy's twin sister, however, expressed her apprehension. I'm kind of scared. What if the training is too difficult? She mumbled, her voice filled with uncertainty. Tazumi, always the optimistic one, chimed in, Don't worry, we'll face whatever challenges come our way. Kiki and Shikura giggled, engaging in their own conversation, while Sammy remained quiet. Nikyu stood next to Keijo, who had gotten attached over the years as friends. He holds a special place in his hair, specifically. Nikyu, do you want to go to the corner store? Keijo asked, breaking the silence. Sure. Nikyu replied, his stutter slightly more noticeable when he felt nervous. To prepare for such occasions, he always carried a notebook with him. Keijo and Nikyu left together, engaging in conversation along the way. Keijo secretly enjoyed the moments when Nikyu stuttered, finding it endearing, but he wasn't about to admit that today.